They say curiosity is a dangerous thing. I never believed that, until I stepped foot in Black Hollow. The road leading into town was eerily quiet, swallowed by thick forests on both sides. My car was the only one in sight, the air outside heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine. The closer I got, the more I noticed how unnatural the silence was. No birds, no rustling leaves, just the hum of my engine and my own shallow breaths. A wooden sign stood at the entrance, its paint faded and chipped. It listed a set of rules, carved deep into the wood, as if someone had rewritten them many times. 1. Do not turn around if you hear footsteps at night. 2. Do not speak to the man in the black hat at the train station. 3. If a door appears where there wasn't one before, never open it. 4. Never stay past midnight on the main road. 5. If you see your reflection move when you don't, leave immediately. I read them twice, then scoffed. Small towns always had their myths, superstitions, designed to keep outsiders wary. But I wasn't here to be scared off. I was here because I had a job to do. I make a living breaking strange rules. It's my obsession, my profession. I'm Alex Mercer, a journalist, if you could call me that. My work isn't the kind you'd find in respectable papers. I hunt down obscure urban legends, bizarre town myths, and secret rules that people claim have dire consequences if broken. And then I break them. I document what happens, or what doesn't, and expose the truth. Black Hollow was my next case. I pulled into the only motel in town, a squat, lifeless building with a neon sign that flickered like it was struggling to stay alive. The clerk barely looked up as I checked in. He handed me the key with a single warning: follow the rules. I smiled. That's not really my thing. His expression didn't change. Then it'll be your problem. I took the key and left, feeling a chill creep down my spine. I convinced myself it was just the cold night air. My room was as lifeless as the town. Plain walls, an old TV, a mirror on the closet door. The bed creaked when I sat on it, the springs groaning under my weight. As I unpacked, I went over my plan. I'd start with the first rule tonight. It was simple. If you hear footsteps, don't turn around. I would turn around. I waited until midnight, then stepped outside. The streets were empty, lit only by dim streetlights that buzzed with dying electricity. I walked along the main road, the cold seeping into my bones. And then, I heard it. Footsteps. Light, deliberate, following me at a steady pace. A normal person would have kept walking. Followed the rule. But I'm not normal. I turned around. The street behind me was empty. No movement. No sound. Just a long stretch of road, disappearing into darkness. My heart pounded harder than I wanted to admit. I forced a laugh. That's it, I muttered, shaking my head. Maybe the wind had played tricks on me. Maybe the town was just trying to scare me. I went back to my room, convinced I had proven the rule to be nothing more than a local superstition. Then I looked in the mirror, and my reflection blinked, a second too late. I woke up to the sound of dripping water. The motel room was silent except for that steady, rhythmic tap, tap, tap coming from the bathroom. For a moment, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember if I had left the sink running. The events of last night replayed in my mind. The strange wooden sign, the list of rules, and the footsteps that had followed me through the empty street. I turned around when I wasn't supposed to. Nothing happened, at least, not yet. Shaking off the unease creeping up my spine, I swung my legs over the side of the bed and rubbed my eyes. The old floorboards creaked beneath my weight as I stood up. The motel smelled of dust and something faintly metallic, like old coins left too long in the rain. I made my way to the bathroom, still groggy from sleep. The dripping sound was louder now. I reached for the sink's faucet and turned it tightly. The dripping stopped. I sighed and looked up at the mirror, and that's when I saw it. For a split second, my reflection didn't move. I blinked. It blinked a moment later. I lifted my hand slowly, waving it in front of my face. The reflection followed, but just a fraction of a second too late. A cold sensation crawled over my skin. My chest tightened. I stepped back, but my reflection didn't. Until it did, after an unnatural pause, like a lagging video, struggling to keep up. I stared at myself, forcing logic into my thoughts. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. It had to be some sort of optical illusion, a trick of light, or a bad night's sleep messing with my head. Yeah, that had to be it. I turned away from the mirror and left the bathroom, but the feeling didn't go away. Even as I sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing my hands together, I felt like something wasn't right. Something had shifted. I looked back at the bathroom mirror from across the room. From this angle, I could barely see my reflection, but I swore it was still moving, like it hadn't stopped watching me. A chill ran down my spine. This town was already getting to me. I needed air. I grabbed my jacket and headed outside. The motel's hallway was dimly lit, the flickering ceiling light casting jittery shadows along the walls. The place was nearly empty. At least, I hadn't seen any other guests since I checked in. Stepping outside, I inhaled the crisp morning air. The town was quiet. Too quiet. Shops sat motionless along the street, their signs swaying gently in the breeze. A woman walked by in the distance, her head down, her steps hurried. A man across the street stood by a newspaper stand, but he wasn't reading, just staring at the ground, unmoving. A feeling settled deep in my gut, a feeling I didn't like. I shoved my hands into my pockets and started walking. I needed coffee, something strong enough to shake off the weirdness of this morning. Maybe even strong enough to make me forget that, for a brief moment, my reflection had moved on its own. I woke up in a cold sweat. The dream had been vivid, too real. The town had been shifting, twisting like a living thing, whispering my name in voices I didn't recognize. For a moment, I lay there, listening to the rhythmic hum of the motel's old heater. But something felt off. I swung my legs over the bed and walked to the bathroom. The mirror above the sink was cracked in one corner, distorting my reflection slightly. I leaned in closer. My reflection blinked a second too late. I staggered back, my breath hitching. No, I muttered. No way. I shook my head, rubbing my eyes. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I was imagining things. I splashed cold water on my face and forced myself to look again. This time, everything seemed normal. Still, a creeping unease settled in my chest. I needed to get out. I needed air. The motel hallway was dimly lit, the flickering lights buzzing softly. As I stepped outside, the night air hit me like a slap. It was eerily silent. No wind, no insects, just an emptiness that made the town feel like it was holding its breath. Then I saw him. A man stood at the far end of the street, his figure barely visible under the yellow glow of a street lamp. He wore a long, dark coat, his hands buried in his pockets. I couldn't make out his face, but I knew he was watching me. A strange feeling settled in my stomach, like an instinct buried deep in my bones. I was being studied, evaluated. I had broken the rules, and now, something was paying attention. I took a step forward, but the man turned and walked away, disappearing around a corner. My feet moved before I could think. I had to know who he was. I followed, my breath quickening as I reached the corner. The street ahead was empty. He was gone. A voice spoke behind me. You shouldn't be out this late. I spun around. A man stood in the shadows, his sharp features illuminated by the flickering light above the motel entrance. He had silver-streaked hair and piercing dark eyes that seemed to bore into me. He wore a heavy coat, similar to the man I'd just seen, but his presence was different. He wasn't just watching me. He was studying me. I don't believe we've met, I said, masking my unease. You're new here, the man said, ignoring my statement. And you've already made mistakes. Something about the way he said it sent a chill down my spine. I don't follow rules that don't make sense, I replied, forcing a smirk. His lips curled slightly, but there was no humor in his expression. The rules aren't for you, he said. They're for it. My smirk faded. He took a slow step closer. You saw the sign when you arrived, didn't you? I nodded. And you ignored it. I don't believe in superstitions, I said. He let out a breath, almost like a sigh. Then you're in danger. I crossed my arms. Who are you? Thomas Graves, he said. I keep things in order here. The way he said it made my stomach twist. You're saying this town is dangerous? I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to me. I hesitated before unfolding it. My blood ran cold. It was a list of names. Dozens of them, all written in neat, precise handwriting. At the very bottom was a name that made my head spin. Alex Mercer. I looked up, my mouth dry. What is this? Thomas's gaze didn't waver. A list of rule breakers. A gust of wind blew through the street, but it carried no warmth, no sound. Just an overwhelming sense of something watching, something waiting. Thomas leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper. The keepers are watching you now. I woke up with a sharp gasp, my heart hammering in my chest. The room was cold, colder than it should have been. The heater was on, but my breath came out in pale, misty clouds. Something was wrong. The dream lingered in my mind like a half-faded memory. In it, I was standing in the middle of Black Hollow, but the town was empty. The buildings were shifting, melting into strange shapes. A voice whispered my name from the shadows. It wasn't calling to me. It was reminding me. I shook it off and pulled the covers tighter around me. Just a dream. Nothing more. Then I saw it. On the motel's bathroom mirror, written in a thin layer of condensation, were the words, "You were here before." I swallowed hard, my throat dry as sandpaper. My first instinct was to check the door. It was still locked from the inside. The windows were shut. No sign of forced entry. I ran a finger over the words, smearing the letters, as if erasing them would make them untrue. But I knew better. Someone, or something, had left me a message, and it wasn't the first time. Determined to get some answers, I left the motel and headed to the town's library. If Black Hollow had a past, I needed to dig it up. The library was a quiet, dusty place. The kind of place where time seemed to settle and forget to move forward. An old woman sat behind the front desk, her gaze flicking toward me with something that looked like recognition. "Looking for something?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "I just moved to town. Thought I'd learn a little history." She stared at me for a long moment before nodding toward the back of the library. "Records are in the archives section. Take what you need, but be quick. Library closes early today." I thanked her and made my way to the archives, pulling out old newspapers and town records. Most of it was the usual small-town stuff. Business openings, missing pets, community events. But then, buried under years of yellowed pages, I found something that made my blood run cold. A newspaper clipping dated October 12, 1993. "Local boy disappears without a trace." I read the article, my hands trembling. A young boy, Alex Mercer, was reported missing after wandering too close to the old train station. Witnesses say he was last seen speaking to a man in a black hat before vanishing. Authorities searched for weeks, but no body was ever found. The name sent a shockwave through my body. My name, Alex Mercer. I flipped through more records, my breath quickening. There were no follow-up reports. No mentions of the boy ever being found. It was as if he had simply vanished from existence. Then I found another clipping. A year later, newcomer arrives in Black Hollow. No memory of his past. I stared at the grainy photo printed on the page. My heart nearly stopped. It was me. I stumbled back, the newspaper slipping from my fingers. The room felt smaller, closing in around me. My stomach twisted, a cold realization settling into my bones. I hadn't just come to Black Hollow for the first time. I had been here before. The town didn't just have strange rules. It had a way of making people forget. I turned on my heel, rushing for the exit, my mind racing. As I reached the front desk, the old woman was still there, watching me with an expression that sent a chill through my spine. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked, her voice eerily calm. I hesitated, gripping the strap of my bag. "Who am I?" I asked, the words barely escaping my lips. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It wasn't kind. "Black Hollow remembers," she whispered. The lights flickered. The shadows in the corners stretched toward me. And in that moment, I knew one thing for certain. I was never meant to leave this town. It had been days since I first stepped into Black Hollow, and the deeper I dug, the more I felt like I was suffocating. I should have left when I had the chance, but that damn curiosity kept pulling me forward. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking in circles, that I had already walked this path before. Only this time, I had no idea where it was going to end. I spent hours in the local archives, flipping through yellowed pages of newspapers and old town records. Every time I tried to find something useful, I found only dead ends, stories of disappearances, of people who had vanished without a trace, and others who came back different. But what struck me the most was a single, weathered document hidden away at the bottom of an old file. It had no name, no date, just a series of bizarre notes about the rules of Black Hollow. I scanned the pages, my heart rate speeding up with every word I read. There was something about these notes that felt wrong. They weren't just about the rules I had already broken. There was more, so much more. According to the document, the rules didn't just protect the town from chaos. They were there to keep something locked away, something older than the town itself, a force that could twist the minds of those who broke the rules, a force that would change them. The deeper I read, the more I realized just how much trouble I had gotten myself into. These rules weren't simply about following orders. They were about control. The town wasn't just a place where the rules were enforced. It was a place where people like me were rewritten. I wasn't supposed to know this. No one was supposed to know this. I felt my skin crawl as the truth hit me like a cold wave. Black Hollow didn't just want to keep its secrets. It wanted to keep its people. Those who broke the rules. They didn't disappear. They didn't die. They were remade, recycled into something else. I slammed the folder shut, my hands shaking. I needed to find Thomas. He was the only one who could explain this, the only one who could answer the questions that now haunted me. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Hell, I knew it might be dangerous. But I had no choice. I had to face him. The streets of Black Hollow seemed different now. Darker, more suffocating. The fog rolled in thick and fast, wrapping itself around my legs as I walked, making it harder to breathe, harder to think. My footsteps echoed through the empty streets, a constant reminder that I was alone, surrounded by something I couldn't understand. I finally reached Thomas's house, a grand, decrepit building that looked like it had been here for centuries. I knocked on the door, though I wasn't sure what I expected. The door creaked open before I could even step back, revealing Thomas standing in the doorway, his cold, calculating eyes fixed on me. "You've been digging, Alex," he said, his voice smooth but heavy with an underlying threat. "I warned you not to break the rules. I'm done listening to you." I spat, my voice barely holding together. "What is this place? What's really happening here?" He stepped aside, motioning for me to enter. I hesitated for a moment, then pushed past him into the darkness of his home. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of old wood and dust. The walls were lined with shelves of ancient books and strange artifacts, each one more unsettling than the last. Thomas led me to a dimly lit room in the back of the house. It was smaller than I expected, but the walls were covered with intricate symbols and strange markings. The center of the room was dominated by an old, cracked mirror, its surface reflecting not just the room, but something darker, something that watched me from within the glass. "This is where it all begins, Alex," Thomas said, his voice low and almost reverent. "The rules were never meant to be broken. They were put in place to protect you, to protect all of us." I was done with his cryptic nonsense. "What do you mean, protect us? The only thing you're protecting is whatever the hell is buried in this town. And you're using us, using me, to keep it locked away." Thomas smiled, his lips curling into something that wasn't quite a grin. "You're right, Alex. This town doesn't just hide its secrets. It feeds on the ones who break its rules, the ones who dare to see past the veil. You were always meant to return here. I knew it the moment I saw you." My stomach twisted as I pieced the truth together. "You're not human. None of this is real, is it?" Thomas's gaze darkened, and he stepped closer, his presence suffocating. "I'm what this town needs. And so are you. We are not the same as we once were. None of us are. Once you break the rules, Alex, there's no going back. You can't escape what you were always meant to become." I backed away from him, my heart hammering in my chest. The room seemed to close in on me, the walls breathing with a life of their own. I felt my legs weaken beneath me, my mind racing to understand what he was saying. Was it true? Had I been here before, in some other life, as part of this cursed town? Was I doomed to return to this place again and again, my memories wiped, my soul remade each time? "Stop," I said, my voice trembling. "What happens now? What do you want from me?" Thomas's smile widened. "What I want, Alex, is for you to follow the final rule. The most important rule of all." My breath hitched as I braced myself for the truth. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Once you see the door that wasn't there before, you never open it." I froze. "You broke it already, didn't you?" Thomas's eyes gleamed. "You've already walked into the room that you were never meant to enter. And now, Alex, you'll be rewritten, just like all the others." I swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. I had opened the door, the one thing I was never supposed to do. And now I was trapped. I had to leave. The town was alive, and it was out to get me. The rules I had broken, the doors I'd opened, the things I had seen, they weren't just mistakes. They were a map to my own destruction. The more I defied the town, the more it seemed to change, warp, and twist. Every step I took, I felt the walls closing in, tightening like a noose. There was no way out, not unless I did something drastic. The air in Black Hollow felt thick, almost suffocating, as though it were filled with the weight of 1,000 forgotten secrets. I could hear it, whispers in the wind, a chorus of voices that didn't belong. The buildings seemed to lean toward me, their crooked windows staring like eyes, hungry, waiting. It was then I realized I wasn't just in the town anymore. I was the town's prey. Thomas Graves had warned me. He'd told me that breaking the rules would have consequences. I'd laughed it off, told myself I was smarter than all this superstition. But now, I could feel the truth gnawing at my mind like a rat in the dark. I had to go. But the more I tried to leave, the more the town shifted. The roads were the same, but somehow they never led anywhere. The buildings, those crumbling structures that once seemed ordinary, now appear to breathe, pulsating like a living thing. There was no escape. Not unless I broke the final rule, the one I had only just learned, the one that seemed to hold the entire town together. It wasn't a rule I wanted to break. It was a rule I feared with every ounce of my being. But as I turned another corner, I saw it, a door, just standing there, in the middle of the street, where none had been before. It wasn't the door I'd expected. This one was solid wood, dark and worn with age, the kind you see in stories where things don't end well. I knew deep down what it meant. I had to keep walking. But my feet didn't listen. My body moved on its own, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. I stood in front of it, the cold wood pressing against my palms. I wanted to scream, to turn around and run, but my legs were paralyzed. And there it was, the whispering voice in my head, the one I couldn't ignore. Don't open the door. Not this one. But I didn't listen. I never did. I twisted the handle. It creaked open. Inside, I saw myself. My reflection, but different, older, darker, a twisted version of me. It sat at a desk, scribbling something on paper. The room smelled of old books, of dust, of something wrong. The figure looked up, and its eyes met mine. A grin spread across its face. A grin that wasn't mine. I slammed the door shut. My heart pounded in my chest, but the door didn't disappear. It stayed there, staring at me, daring me to open it again. I took a step back, breath shallow, and looked around. The town had changed. It had shifted, like a living creature that was now aware of me. It knew what I had done, and it wasn't going to let me leave. I stumbled toward the road, but the street was different now. The houses weren't where they had been. The trees, they leaned in closer. I wasn't just seeing things. Everything was moving. A shadow loomed ahead of me, tall and menacing. Thomas, you should have listened, Alex, he said, his voice colder than the night air. You thought you could break the rules and walk away without consequence, but the town remembers. It always remembers. I tried to back away, but I couldn't. The ground beneath me felt like it was sinking. My breath caught in my throat. Thomas stepped closer, his face now a twisted mask of calm menace. You're part of this town now. You always have been. Every rule broken, every door opened, has led you here. And now you'll see what happens when someone like you thinks they can escape. I knew what he was saying was true. I could feel it in the air, in the shifting, bending reality around me. I had played with forces I didn't understand, and now they were turning against me. In a final act of desperation, I made a decision. I had learned something from Thomas. Something I had to try. If I couldn't escape the rules, maybe I could rewrite them. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, focusing on what I had to do. I couldn't run, but maybe I could break the one rule I hadn't yet. If you see him coming, close your eyes and don't breathe. I held my breath and shut my eyes tightly, focusing on the silence that enveloped me. The town seemed to shudder. I could feel it. Something was shifting. It was like the whole world had stopped. The air turned still. The oppressive weight I had carried for so long lifted, if only for a second. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing in the middle of the street. But nothing looked the same. The town was silent, the houses dark. The shadow of Thomas was gone. I turned around, looking for any sign of movement, but there was nothing. The town was still. I had done it. I had escaped. But as I walked, the thought lingered in the back of my mind. What had I really done? Had I broken the cycle? Or had I just reset it? And then, I saw it. The sign at the edge of town. A weathered, familiar sign. As I stepped closer, I saw the rules written on it, just like before. But this time, there was one new rule. Do not break your own rules. I stopped dead in my tracks. Had I really escaped? Or was I just going to wake up again, caught in the same trap? I couldn't tell. And that scared me more than anything else in Black Hollow. I woke up in a bed that wasn't mine. The sheets were too clean, too fresh, and the faint scent of lavender lingered in the air. I blinked, trying to adjust my vision to the unfamiliar surroundings. The walls were painted a soft beige, and there was a soft, warm light spilling through the window. It was too peaceful, nothing like the nightmare I had just escaped. My heart raced, but there was a dull ache in my chest, as if something had been ripped away from me. I sat up slowly, the coolness of the room brushing against my skin, and I rubbed my eyes, trying to piece things together. The last thing I remembered was the town collapsing around me, Thomas's hollow smile, the twisted door that led me to another version of myself. But now everything felt still. The door to the room creaked open, and a woman stepped inside. She was young, maybe in her late 20s, with soft brown hair and eyes that seemed too kind. She smiled at me, her expression warm, almost like a welcome, but there was something unsettling about her gaze. "You're awake," she said, her voice light and easy, like I hadn't just been through hell. I nodded, still unsure whether I was dreaming or if this was real. "Where am I?" She tilted her head, as if surprised by the question. "You're in Westfield. It's a small town, just like any other. You've been here for a couple of days now." Westfield. I never heard of it before, but the name felt strangely familiar, like something I should have known. I pushed myself off the bed, my legs shaky beneath me. The disorientation was starting to wear off, but my mind was still tangled in the horrors of Black Hollow. "What happened?" I asked, trying to make sense of everything. "Don't worry," she replied, walking over to a small table by the window and picking up a glass of water. "You've had a long journey. We found you on the outskirts of town. You seemed disoriented, but you're safe now. You're welcome here." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But something was wrong, something I couldn't place. As I stared out the window at the quiet, tree-lined streets, the unease grew in the pit of my stomach. "Safe," I repeated, more to myself than to her. Her smile faltered for a split second, just long enough for me to notice. Then she quickly covered it up, as if nothing had happened. "Yes," she said, but the word felt empty. "Everything's normal here. Just take a deep breath. You'll feel better soon." I took the water she handed me and drank, feeling the cold liquid slide down my throat, but it did nothing to ease the tension in my chest. I set the glass down, my fingers still trembling. I wanted to ask more questions, to get some sense of why I was here, but a nagging feeling gnawed at the back of my mind. It was like a whisper in my ear, telling me that something was off, that I wasn't truly free. And then I saw it. It was faint at first, just a glimpse, as if my eyes weren't fully adjusting to the light. But when I looked closer, I saw it clearly. There, just outside the window at the entrance of the town, was a wooden sign. It was old, with peeling paint, but the words were clear. A new set of rules. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't noticed it before, but it was unmistakable now. The sign was new, but the words, they were familiar. They carried the weight of something I couldn't escape, no matter how hard I tried. I stood up, the room spinning slightly as I moved toward the window. My hands shook as I pressed them against the glass, desperately searching for any sign that the rules I had broken in Black Hollow weren't following me here. I could see it more clearly now, the words carved into the wood. The first few were simple, like the others I had broken in Black Hollow. "Do not turn around if you hear footsteps behind you. Do not speak to the man in the black hat at the train station." And then, at the bottom, in freshly carved letters that made my heart skip a beat, was the final rule. "Do not break your own rules." The air in the room grew heavy, suffocating. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I thought I might suffocate right there, in that sterile room with its soft, calming atmosphere. But the truth was, I didn't need to breathe to understand what this was. I wasn't free. I hadn't escaped. I had moved into another trap, another cycle. And the rules, The rules were never going to stop following me. I turned back toward the door, my mind racing. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't risk breaking the rules again. But then I stopped myself. Wasn't that what I had done in Black Hollow? Broke every rule without thinking of the consequences? And now, I was stuck in this new town, staring at a sign that was telling me not to break my own rules. But what if the rule was already broken? What if by just being here, I was already bound to it? The woman in the room, who had been watching me with that strange, unreadable smile, moved toward the door, as though she had been waiting for me to realize something. "You'll get used to it," she said softly. "The rules always find a way to bring you back." I stared at her, my heart hammering in my chest. The feeling of dread was rising again, like a tidal wave. But this time it wasn't just the town. It was me. And I had broken the one rule that might have set me free. The door clicked shut behind me, and I was left alone in the stillness of Westfield, knowing that the real game had only just begun. The second story. It was the kind of night that made you want to lock all your doors, close the blinds, and pretend the world outside didn't exist. The wind howled like a beast in the dark, rattling the trees and sending leaves skittering across the cracked sidewalk. I didn't have a choice, though. The ad was right there in front of me. Babysitting job. $500 per night. Immediate start. I'd seen ads before, but something about this one stuck with me. Maybe it was the money. Hell, I could use it. Desperate times, desperate measures. And it wasn't like I had anything else going for me. I was barely scraping by, hopping between low-paying gigs, just trying to stay afloat. I looked at the address again. A mansion. Tall, old, tucked away on the outskirts of town like a secret no one was supposed to know. The last place I would have ever thought to take a babysitting job. But when I saw the pay, the choice became obvious. Besides, what could go wrong? Babysitting, right? Just watching a kid while the parents were out. Easy money. I clicked the ad and dialed the number. It rang a few times before someone picked up. "Hello." The voice on the other end was calm, even a little cold. "Hi, I'm calling about the babysitting job," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, like this was just any other normal gig. "I saw your ad. You still need someone?" "Yes," the woman replied, her voice almost too calm. "I need someone tonight, 8 p.m. sharp. Are you available?" I felt a brief hesitation. It wasn't like I had plans, but something about her urgency made me second-guess my decision. But the money, $500, that was hard to ignore. "I can do it," I said, trying to sound confident. "Where should I come?" She gave me the address, and as soon as she hung up, I grabbed my jacket and headed out. The fog was rolling in thick as I drove, the streets quiet except for the occasional car passing by, headlights cutting through the mist like ghostly fingers. It felt like I was driving into another world, a world where rules didn't apply, and things that should have stayed hidden were waiting just beneath the surface. The mansion was exactly what I imagined. A massive, old stone building with towering spires and dark, narrow windows. The front gate creaked on its hinges as I pulled up, the gravel crunching beneath my tires. A chill crawled up my spine, but I brushed it off. People lived in places like this all the time, right? It was just old. That's all. I stepped out of the car, my boots sinking slightly into the soft earth as I walked up the long driveway. I wasn't used to places this grand. The front door swung open just before I knocked, and a woman stood in the doorway. Her face was pale, her eyes almost too wide. She gave me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Come in," she said softly, almost as if she were whispering the words more to herself than to me. "You're just in time." I followed her inside, the door closing with a heavy thud behind me. The house smelled old, musty wood and something faintly floral, like stale perfume. Everything was still, except for the faint ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner of the room. The walls were lined with dark paintings and strange carvings. It felt like I'd stepped into another century, into some strange, forgotten place where time moved differently. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," she said, leading me down a narrow hallway. "My son, Noah, is upstairs. He's a good boy, but a little sensitive. He needs someone he can trust." I nodded, feeling a slight unease creep into my chest. There was something off about her, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe it was just the house, maybe it was her eyes, wide, almost unblinking. But whatever it was, I wasn't going to back out now. The money was too good. She stopped at the foot of the staircase and turned to me, her gaze heavy. "There are a few rules," she said, her voice sharp now, cutting through the silence. "I expect you to follow them. Strictly. Understand?" I nodded, trying to hide my growing discomfort. "First, don't go upstairs until after midnight. Second, you'll stay in the main floor rooms only. No wandering. Third, do not disturb Noah after midnight. Do you understand?" Her voice had become colder, more distant as she spoke. "Got it," I replied quickly, eager to get the job started and to get away from the eerie vibe she was giving off. I just wanted to meet this kid and get the night over with. She gave a small nod and walked toward a door at the end of the hall. "You'll find Noah's room there. I'll be back in a few hours. Keep the rules in mind, Carl. It's for your safety." Her voice trailed off as she turned and disappeared into the shadows. I stood there for a moment, staring at the door. Something didn't feel right. But like any job, I figured I'd just do what I was paid to do and leave. No harm, no foul. Little did I know, I was already trapped. I stepped inside, the smell of old wood and dust hitting me like a slap to the face. The mansion was massive, stretching farther than I had imagined, with long corridors and towering ceilings. It felt like the kind of place that could swallow you whole, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was already doing that. The house was too quiet, too still. Silva led me down a narrow hallway, the only sound our footsteps echoing against the stone floor. She moved quickly, with a kind of purpose that made me think she knew exactly what she was doing here, like she'd been walking these halls for a long time. I, on the other hand, felt completely out of place, like an intruder in a home that wasn't mine. It made my skin crawl. We came to a door at the end of the hall, a large wooden thing with carvings that looked like they belonged to another century. Silva opened it without hesitation, her fingers brushing over the handle with a strange tenderness. As she stepped inside, I followed, my eyes taking in the room. It was dimly lit, the only light coming from a single lamp on a table in the corner. There was a chair in the middle of the room, and Silva motioned for me to sit. Her gaze was cold, calculating. Her face didn't move, but her eyes seemed to say everything. "Before I leave," she said, her voice flat and direct, "I need you to understand something." I sat down, a little too quickly, like a child trying to obey a stern parent. There was something in her tone that made me uneasy, something that made me think I wasn't just sitting in some random room, but in the center of something much bigger than myself. She reached in her coat pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper, unfolding it slowly. The paper felt old, the edges frayed, like it had been passed down through generations. She laid it out on the table in front of me, and my eyes skimmed over the neat, precise handwriting that marked each line. "These are the rules," she said, her voice steady. "Follow them, and you'll be fine. Break them, and—" She let the sentence hang, unfinished. I leaned in to read the list, each word giving me a sinking feeling in my stomach. 1. Don't leave the house after dark. 2. Never enter the attic. 3. Do not disturb Noah after midnight. I blinked, reading the last line again. Do not disturb Noah after midnight. It seemed like such a strange thing to say. What could possibly be so dangerous about a child, especially one who had been so quiet? The rules didn't make sense, but Silva's expression was unwavering, as if these were matters of life and death. "You'll understand soon enough," she said, as though reading my mind. Her tone was odd, like she was trying to reassure me, but I could hear the warning beneath the calm. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed her. The rules felt like the sort of thing you'd see in an old horror movie, something about keeping out of places you're not supposed to be. It was all too convenient, too perfect, like someone had designed this house to trap you inside. It didn't sit right with me, but at that moment, I told myself I was just overthinking it. It was a job, a well-paid one at that. I glanced back at the paper. "Is that all?" I asked, my voice a little shakier than I wanted it to be. Silva didn't answer at first, but when she did, her words sent a chill through me. "One more thing," she said, her eyes locking onto mine. "If you see anything that doesn't make sense, don't question it. Just let it be. Trust me. It's for your own safety." Her words hung in the air, thick and heavy, like the mansion was swallowing up everything around us. I wanted to ask her more, to push for answers, but I knew better than to question a woman like this. She wasn't just the mother of the kid I was supposed to watch. She was someone who controlled this place, who knew every inch of it. And I was the outsider, She stood up without another word, her movements smooth, almost mechanical. She didn't give me a chance to respond before she turned and walked to the door. The air shifted with her departure, and for a moment, I was alone in the room, holding my breath. I stared at the rules again. They felt ominous, like a warning written just for me. I had the strange urge to crumple the paper into a ball and throw in the trash, to ignore everything and leave. But I didn't. The $500 was too tempting, and part of me still thought I could handle it, no matter how strange it seemed. As I folded the paper and slid it into my pocket, I felt the weight of the house settling around me, like it was waiting, watching. It was as if the walls themselves were listening, waiting for me to break the rules. And deep down, I knew I was going to. I had only been in the mansion for a few hours, but already it felt like something was off. The house was vast, each room stretching into the next like a labyrinth. The floors creaked under my steps, the air thick with the musty smell of old wood and dust. I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were watching me, or maybe it was the silence itself. It was suffocating. Noah, the child I was supposed to look after, hadn't said much since I arrived. At first, I assumed he was just shy, but his quietness was unnerving. He'd sit by the window, staring out at the thick fog, his little hands pressed against the glass. I would try to ask him questions, but he'd only look at me with those pale blue eyes that seemed way too old for a kid his age. "They're waiting for you," he whispered once, barely audible, as I came into the room. He didn't explain who they were, and I didn't ask. I didn't know if I wanted to know. It wasn't just Noah that felt off. The house itself felt wrong. Every now and then, I would hear strange noises, whispers, maybe, or the sound of footsteps that weren't mine. The floorboards above me would creak in a rhythm that didn't match my own. I could feel a presence in the shadows, like something was always just out of sight, watching, waiting. I tried to ignore it. I had a job to do, and I didn't want to seem like some scared idiot. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was just an old house with old noises. But as the evening wore on, the strange sensations only grew stronger. It was when I went to check on Noah that I really began to feel it. The humming. It was soft at first, almost like a distant tune, but as I stepped into his room, it grew louder, as if it were coming from the walls themselves. I stood frozen in the doorway, my pulse quickening. There was no music playing, no radio. The house was silent except for that eerie sound, as though the walls were singing a song I couldn't understand. "Noah," I called out, stepping closer. He didn't respond, just kept staring out the window. "Noah." Finally, he turned his head toward me, his expression unreadable. "They're watching," he said in a low voice, barely above a whisper. His eyes flicked to the corner of the room, to the shadows that seemed to stretch further than they should have. A cold shiver ran down my spine. "What are you talking about?" He didn't answer, but the humming grew louder, almost deafening. My head started to ache, a sharp, unbearable pressure building in my temples. I had to get out of there. I took a step back, but as soon as I turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind me with a force that made me jump. I spun around, heart racing. Noah was still staring at me, unblinking, as though he hadn't noticed anything was wrong. But I could feel it. Something wasn't right. I quickly opened the door and stepped into the hall, taking a deep breath. The air in the hallway was colder now, and the shadows seemed thicker, deeper. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Every step I took echoed too loudly in the silence, each one followed by the faintest sound of a creak, like something moving behind me. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. Nothing except the dark corners, stretching further than they should. I didn't want to go near the attic. I remember the rules, Silva's rules. But something was pulling me toward it, something that made my heart race with a mix of fear and curiosity. I couldn't help it. I had to know. What was really going on here? I moved down the hall, the wall seeming to close in on me, my breath coming faster. My mind raced as I tried to convince myself that everything was just a figment of my imagination, that I was just tired. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The attic door loomed ahead, dark and foreboding. It stood at the end of the hall, almost like it was waiting for me to come closer. The handle was cold to the touch, and, as I gripped it, I could feel a chill that seeped into my bones. I hesitated for just a moment. My hand hovered over the doorknob, and for a brief second, I almost turned back. But the humming, low, persistent, was still in my ears, growing louder, urging me on. I twisted the handle, the door creaking open slowly, revealing a pitch-black room. I couldn't see anything inside, but I could feel something there. Something was watching me. My breath caught in my throat. I took a step inside, and then everything went silent. The humming stopped. The air felt heavier, thicker. I didn't know what I was expecting to find up there, but I was sure it wasn't this. The attic was empty, except for piles of old furniture and boxes covered in dust. But there was something else, something I couldn't explain. In the far corner of the room, a tall, dark figure stood, its features hidden in shadow. It was as if the darkness itself had taken form, looming in the corner, waiting for me to notice it. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to scream, to run, but my feet wouldn't move. It was like the room had swallowed me whole, trapping me in its silent, suffocating presence. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure was gone. I stumbled back, my hands shaking. I didn't know what I had just seen, but I was sure of one thing. The house wasn't just old and creepy. It was alive, and it was keeping secrets, dark ones, ones that I wasn't supposed to know. I backed out of the attic, my mind racing. Something was terribly wrong here, and I had no idea what I had just stumbled into. But I was about to find out. The evening crawled on, slow and thick like the fog that clung to the mansion's windows. The rules that Silva had given me still echoed in my mind. Don't leave the house after dark. Never enter the attic. Do not disturb Noah after midnight. It was getting harder to ignore the heavy feeling settling in my chest. The mansion was so silent, the kind of silence that makes you feel like you're not alone. Even when Noah wasn't around, I felt like someone, or something, was always watching me. The air in here was colder than it should have been, even with the fire crackling in the hearth. I tried to keep busy, tidying up the rooms, checking on Noah every now and then. But the house felt oppressive, its walls closing in on me. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps behind me. I kept turning, but there was never anyone there. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it ever should have. And then, the sound began. It was faint at first, just a whisper of something that could have been the wind. But the more I listened, the clearer it became. It was a humming sound. Soft, almost comforting. But something about it unsettled me. It was too rhythmic, too deliberate. It didn't sound like something that belonged in the house. I looked around the room, my eyes darting to the shadows in the corners. The walls were old, the plaster cracked in some places, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I stepped closer to the source of the sound, my heart beginning to race, wondering if I had just imagined it. But then, the humming grew louder, and I could tell it was coming from behind the walls. I froze. My breath hitched in my throat. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't just the house settling. There was something inside the walls, something alive. I pressed my ear against the cool surface of the wall, feeling a chill run through me. The sound seemed to pulse beneath my skin, vibrating through my bones. I couldn't tell if it was trying to reach me or if it was warning me. Stop, I whispered to myself, stepping back quickly. I rubbed my face, trying to shake the unease that had suddenly taken hold of me. I had to be imagining things. It was just an old house. Old houses made strange noises. But even as I told myself that, the humming didn't stop. It was getting louder, more insistent. I needed to ignore it, push out of my mind. But something deep inside me told me that ignoring it wasn't enough. The house was trying to tell me something. I turned to leave the room, my pulse thumping in my ears. As I crossed the hall, I caught a glimpse of Noah in the corner of my eye. He was standing by the window, staring out into the darkness, his back to me. "Hey, Noah," I called out, walking towards him. He didn't respond, didn't even move. His tiny figure was barely visible in the dim light of the room, but I could see his silhouette standing still as a statue. "Hey, Noah, what's wrong?" I asked, my voice hesitant. He turned slowly, his face still hidden in the shadows. And when he looked at me, I felt a shiver slide down my spine. His eyes were wide, too wide, and his expression was blank, as though he had forgotten how to smile. I couldn't shake the feeling that his gaze wasn't really focused on me at all. "They're waiting," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I stepped closer, unsure if I should even ask. But something about the way he said it made my throat tighten. "Who's waiting?" I asked, my voice coming out more nervous than I'd intended. But Noah just kept staring at me, his lips barely moving as he repeated the words again. "They're waiting for you." I backed away from him, my heart thumping harder in my chest. I didn't know what he meant, didn't know if he was just a kid with an overactive imagination or if he was trying to tell me something real, something dark. I forced myself to take a deep breath, steadying my hands. "Okay, Noah," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Why don't you go get some rest? I'll check on you later, all right?" He didn't say anything, just stood there, staring, as I slowly backed out of the room and shut the door behind me. I leaned against it, my breathing shallow, my mind racing. What he meant by "they're waiting for you." Was he just being strange, or was it something more? The humming from the walls returned, more urgent now, and I could swear I felt something shift in the house. The air grew even colder, and a sudden gust of wind rattled the windows. It was as though the house itself was reacting to the words Noah had said. I had to figure out what was going on. I had to find a way out of here before the night dragged on any longer. But deep down, I knew that I wasn't in control. Something else was in charge now. Something darker, something waiting. And no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, I could feel it closing in on me. The silence of the mansion is suffocating. After Silva left, I tried to relax, tried to push the tension out of my muscles, but I couldn't. The air felt thick, like the house was holding its breath, waiting for something. The creaks of the old building echoed down the halls, each one seeming louder than the last. I kept thinking I heard something, or someone, moving in the distance, but every time I checked, there was nothing, just shadows and old furniture. I'd stayed close to the rules. I didn't go near the attic, didn't wander outside after the sun had set. But the house, it felt different now, like it was more than just a place. I don't know how to explain it, but it was almost as if it was alive, breathing, watching. Around midnight, I decided to check on Noah. I hadn't seen him for a while, and I didn't want to leave him alone in this place for too long. I found him sitting by the window, staring out into the dark, his little hands pressed against the glass. The fog outside was thick, swallowing up the world outside. It looked like something from a nightmare. He didn't move when I called his name, just kept staring, unblinking. It was like I wasn't even there. I approached slowly, trying not to make a sound, but something in my chest tightened. The air felt colder as I got closer, colder than it should have been. "Noah," I said again, and this time he turned his head, slowly, like he had all the time in the world. His eyes were wide, too wide, almost unnatural. "They're here," he whispered. "Who's here?" I asked, trying to keep the shakiness out of my voice. Noah didn't answer. He just looked past me, his gaze fixed on something behind me, something I couldn't see. My heart pounded. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. I tried to push it aside. It was just a kid, right? Maybe he was just spooked from the house. I told myself that over and over, but the feeling in my gut told me it was more than that. "Come on, Noah, let's go to bed, okay?" I said, trying to sound calm. I took his hand, and for a moment, I felt his grip tighten. Too tight, almost painful. But he didn't let go. The house groaned beneath us, a low sound that seemed to come from deep within its walls. I froze, my hand still on Noah's, but it wasn't him making that noise. It was the house. It sounded like it was stretching, shifting, moving as if it had a life of its own. I looked around, expecting to see someone, anything, but there was nothing. That's when I heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible hum. At first, I thought it was the wind. But no, it was coming from the walls. It was too rhythmic, too deliberate. It was like the house was singing. Noah didn't seem bothered. He was already walking ahead of me, his little feet making no sound on the old wooden floor. He turned down a hall I hadn't noticed before, a narrow passageway I hadn't been told about. The air here felt even colder, if that was possible. "Noah," I called after him, but he didn't respond. He just kept walking down that narrow hall, as if he was guided by something other than himself. I followed, more out of curiosity than anything else, but every step I took made the air feel thicker, the shadows deeper. The walls around me seemed to pulse, the soft hum growing louder. The house wasn't just creaking anymore. It was groaning, like it was waking up, like it was stretching after a long sleep. Every movement in the shadows felt like it had a purpose, like the house was listening. I caught up with Noah just as he reached the end of the hall, standing in front of a door I'd never seen before. It wasn't one of the ones I had been told not to open. It was completely new, hidden in plain sight. Noah's tiny hand reached up to touch the handle. "This is where they are," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper, but it hit me like a punch to the chest. His words were like a key turning in a lock, unlocking something deep inside me. My pulse quickened. I didn't want to open this door. I didn't want to know what was behind it, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, frozen in place, watching as Noah pushed the door open slowly. The sound of the hinges screeching made my stomach flip. The room beyond was pitch black, darker than any room I'd seen in the house, and the hum, oh God, the hum was louder now, almost deafening. "Noah, we need to go back," I said, stepping forward, my voice shaking more than I wanted it to. But Noah didn't answer. He just stood there, the door now wide open, his figure barely visible in the darkness beyond. I stepped closer, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I wanted to scream, wanted to run, but my feet felt like they were stuck in quicksand. The house was pulling me in, pulling me towards something I didn't understand. And then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. It wasn't Noah. Not anymore. The thing that stood in front of me was tall, impossibly tall, its shape shifting in and out of the darkness. It had no face, just dark, hollow eyes that seemed to look right through me. Its hands were long, too long, ending in fingers that looked like they could reach inside my soul. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The figure reached for me, its hands moving unnaturally fast, and the last thing I saw before everything went black was Noah's voice, echoing in the back of my mind. "They're waiting for you." And then, everything went silent. The house was quieter than usual that night, the only sound the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards beneath my feet as I moved from room to room, checking on things. The fog outside had thickened, pressing against the windows like some kind of invisible force trying to get inside. I didn't know why, but something about the stillness made the house feel alive, like it was breathing, slowly, almost imperceptibly. I glanced at the clock on the wall. Midnight was creeping closer. I knew Noah should be in bed by now. Silva had warned me not to disturb him after midnight. Something about his routine being sacred. But as I passed by his door, a strange compulsion made me stop. I told myself it was just the eerie atmosphere playing tricks on my mind, but the curiosity clawed at me anyway. I knocked gently at first, then pushed the door open just a little. Noah's room was dimly lit, the soft glow of a small nightlight casting strange shadows against the walls. But it was what I saw next that sent a chill running down my spine. Noah wasn't in his bed. Instead, he was sitting cross-legged in the middle of the floor, surrounded by strange symbols drawn in chalk. I took a hesitant step closer, my heart starting to beat faster as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. The symbols weren't anything I'd ever seen before. They looked ancient, twisting lines, jagged shapes, and loops that almost seemed to move if you stared at them long enough. They were drawn with precision, like someone had spent hours on them. I cleared my throat, trying to get his attention. "Noah." He didn't respond at first. His eyes were fixed on the floor, as if he hadn't heard me. I was about to say something else when he looked up, and, for the first time since I arrived, his gaze felt unsettling. There was something cold about it, something beyond his years. It was as though he could see straight through me, past the facade of normality I was desperately clinging to. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly, his voice oddly hollow. I frowned. "What's all this, Noah? What are these symbols?" He tilted his head to the side, like he was considering the question. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he pointed to the symbols on the floor. "They're watching. They listen." My stomach turned, a cold sweat creeping up the back of my neck. "Who's watching?" Noah didn't answer. Instead, he reached for a small object beside him, something I hadn't noticed before, an old, rusted key. He held it up to the light, the metal gleaming faintly in the dim room. I felt my pulse quicken. That key. I had seen it before. I couldn't remember where, but I had seen it. "Do you know what this is?" Noah asked, his voice suddenly sharp, as though the child I had been talking to moments ago had been replaced by someone, or something else. I shook my head, trying to steady my breath. "What is it, Noah? What does it unlock?" His smile was small, twisted. "The house, Carl. It unlocks everything. The house is waiting for you to understand." I took a step back, my mind racing. The house. What was he talking about? This was just a babysitting job. Just a job that had already started feeling too strange, too wrong. Noah continued staring at me, his eyes never leaving mine. You're part of it now. You can't leave. The words sent a shock through my chest, like an electric jolt. My legs felt weak, and, for a second, I thought I might collapse. What did he mean? What had I got myself into? Before I could say anything, Noah stood up suddenly, his movements too quick, too jerky. He reached for the door to his closet and pulled it open. Inside was a small, wooden box, ornately carved with the same symbols from the floor. He pulled it out and placed it in my hands, its weight strangely heavy. Everything you need is in there, he said, his voice now barely above a whisper. I hesitated, looking down at the box. Something told me I shouldn't open it. Something deep inside me was screaming to leave, but I couldn't resist. My fingers trembled as I opened the lid. Inside, there was a small piece of old parchment, covered in more of the same symbols. The ink looked fresh, though, like it had been written just hours ago. As I stared at it, the words began to shift before my eyes, as if they were alive. They made no sense, but the feeling of dread that filled me was too much to ignore. This wasn't just some forgotten relic. It was part of something much darker. Before I could make sense of it, Noah's voice cut through the silence, colder now, more distant. Don't fight it. You were chosen. I slammed the box shut, my heart hammering in my chest. My hands shook as I stared at him, trying to process what had just happened. Chosen for what? I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. Noah didn't answer. He simply walked toward the door, turned the handle, and before leaving, he looked over his shoulder with a knowing smile. You'll see soon enough, Carl. You'll see soon enough. I stood frozen, the box still heavy in my hands. My mind raced, thoughts colliding with each other in a chaotic mess. This wasn't just a babysitting job anymore. It was a nightmare I was trapped in, and I didn't know how to get out. I wanted to run, but I knew, deep down, that wherever I went, the house would follow. It always did, and now I was part of it. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, the air thick with the kind of heaviness that made every breath feel like a struggle. It wasn't just the house. There was something darker here. Silva's cryptic warnings echoed in my mind, but I couldn't stop myself. I needed answers. The attic door was old, worn, and nearly covered with dust. The handle was cold, like the mansion itself, and I knew from the moment I touched it that it wouldn't be as simple as unlocking a door. Something was waiting for me. The key was hidden in a drawer in the study, buried beneath papers I didn't understand. I didn't care about the details, just the fact that it was locked, and I was determined to open it. I twisted the key into the rusted lock, hearing it click, the sound too loud in the dead silence. With a slow breath, I pushed the door open, my heart beating faster. The attic smelled of old wood and mildew. Dust swirled in the dim light, making everything look like a faded memory. I took a hesitant step inside, the floor creaking under my weight. The room was cluttered with boxes and trunks. Some were sealed shut, others opened, revealing faded photographs, yellowed papers, and objects that didn't seem to belong. It was the kind of place where you could get lost in time. As my eyes adjusted to the low light, I spotted something strange. A collection of old, faded portraits hung on the far wall. Each picture was a portrait of a child, but the faces seemed unnervingly familiar. My chest tightened as I took a closer look, each face growing more unsettling the longer I stared. There was a resemblance to Noah in every single one of them. The same eyes, the same pale complexion, and most chillingly, the same expression, hollow, distant, as though they were all looking at something beyond this world. I reached out and touched the first frame, the glass cold beneath my fingers. Something about these portraits made my stomach churn. It wasn't just the similarity to Noah. It was the emptiness in their eyes, like they were part of a long-forgotten ritual. But there was no time to waste thinking about the faces on the wall. I turned my attention to the boxes, pulling open the first one that caught my eye. Inside was a pile of tattered books. Their covers were worn, their spines cracked from age. The titles were written in languages I didn't recognize, the script curling in a way that made me feel uneasy. I flipped through one of them, my fingers trembling as I skimmed the pages. They weren't written like normal books. The words were interspersed with strange symbols and drawings, some of them reminding me of the chalk marks I had seen in Noah's room. I set the book down and opened another box. This one was filled with small, strange relics, carved wooden figures, stones with odd inscriptions, and jars filled with something I couldn't identify. I couldn't explain it, but looking at these objects made my skin crawl. It was as though they were alive in some way, pulsating with an energy that I couldn't comprehend. In the back corner of the attic, I spotted something that made my blood run cold. A large, ornate mirror leaned against the wall, its surface cracked, but still reflecting the dim light. There was something about the way it stood there, as though it didn't belong with the rest of the clutter. It felt wrong. I stepped toward it cautiously, my breath catching in my throat as I looked into the reflection. The dim light in the room seemed to shift, growing darker as I stared at the cracked glass. Then, as if in a haze, I saw a figure standing behind me in the reflection. I spun around, but there was nothing there, just the empty attic, the clutter, the silence. My pulse raced. I could have sworn I'd seen someone standing there, watching me. But when I turned, there was no one. I backed away from the mirror, my heart hammering in my chest. There was no denying it anymore. This wasn't just a creepy, old mansion. There was something much darker going on here, something that had been hidden in plain sight for decades, maybe even centuries. I was caught in something I didn't understand, and the deeper I dug, the more I realized there was no way out. The truth was clear now. This mansion, this house, wasn't just a home. It was a prison. And Noah, he wasn't just a child. He was part of something much more sinister, something much older than me. I had been brought here for a reason. I was part of the story now, and there was no turning back. The clock was ticking. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, each second stretching longer, each minute heavier than the last. The air in the attic felt thick, as if I was suffocating on the weight of everything I had uncovered. Every step I took felt like I was sinking deeper into quicksand, the house pulling me in. I was standing in front of the altar. The room had no windows, only dim light from a single candle flickering on the stone table. On it, strange symbols were carved deep into the surface, glowing faintly, pulsing like they were alive. The floor beneath me was cold and uneven, covered in dust, but it wasn't just the dust that made the air feel oppressive. It was the feeling that something ancient was awakening around me. And then I saw them. Silva was standing across the room, her dark eyes fixed on me. Her cold expression hadn't changed since the moment she'd hired me. There was no sign of fear or concern. She looked like someone who had already won, like the end was inevitable. She didn't even flinch as I stepped further into the room. Noah, standing by her side, didn't look like the child I had met. His eyes weren't those of a scared, quiet boy. They were deep, hollow, and unnatural, as if someone else had taken up residence behind them. "You're too late, Carl," Silva said, her voice soft, almost melodic. It sent a shiver down my spine. The ritual has already begun. There's no turning back. I took a step back, feeling my breath catch in my throat. "What do you mean, ritual? What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, my voice shaking, but I couldn't stop myself from asking. I needed to understand. Silva tilted her head slightly, as though amused by my panic. "Noah has been preparing for this moment his entire life. You were the missing piece, the final ingredient to make it all work." I shook my head, trying to deny what she was saying. "You're insane. This isn't real." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she reached down and placed her hand on Noah's shoulder. His face was pale, his expression empty, but I could see the tiniest flicker of something in his eyes. It was like he was trapped behind a veil, watching me, but unable to reach out. "You see, Carl," Silva continued, "this house, this place has been used for centuries. It's a vessel, a conduit for something much older. A curse, a power that must be passed on through generations. Noah has been chosen to carry it." I didn't understand, but something inside me was starting to click. The strange symbols, the things I'd seen around the house, the rules. Everything was a piece of the puzzle, and now it was all falling into place, like a horrific truth I had refused to acknowledge. "And you," Silva said, her voice turning colder, "were brought here to seal it. You were never meant to leave. Not after you found the key." I glanced down at the ground, where a small, jagged piece of metal, something I'd found earlier in the library, was lying on the floor. I picked it up, staring at it in confusion, but now I saw it for what it truly was. The key to the ritual. It was something I never even noticed before, but now that I was holding it, the weight of its significance hit me all at once. You have no idea what you're a part of, Silva whispered, stepping closer. But you will. You'll be part of Noah's rebirth, his ascension. The curse will finally be fulfilled. Noah raised his head, his eyes now locked on mine. They were so dark, so empty, like they weren't his own. My heart started racing as he stepped forward, his movements slow but deliberate. I tried to back away, but something invisible held me in place. I couldn't breathe. The walls seemed to close in around me, the temperature in the room dropping. The coldness seeped into my skin, making my muscles stiffen. My legs felt like they were turning to stone. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. I couldn't move. Silva stepped forward, holding out a small knife, its blade glinting in the candlelight. "It's time," she said softly. "Place the key in the altar. Complete the circle." I didn't want to do it. I couldn't. But somehow, it felt like the room was pushing me toward the altar, as if it were my only option. The knife in her hand, the weight of her gaze, everything was drawing me in. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "Please," I begged, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't want to do this." But Silva was relentless. "You don't have a choice, Carl." I looked down at the key, feeling its sharp edges press into my palm. It burned against my skin, and I could almost hear whispers coming from the walls, from the shadows, urging me to move, to finish what I had started. I raised my hand, the key trembling in my fingers. The room grew colder still, and I knew this was the moment. The moment when everything would change. The moment when I would either seal my fate or... A low growl came from the shadows behind me. I whipped around, my heart skipping a beat, but there was nothing there. Just darkness. The air felt thick, suffocating. A low hum began to echo through the room, vibrating the walls and floor. My pulse thundered in my ears as I approached the altar, the key held in my shaking hand. This was it. This was the ritual, and I had no choice but to finish it. I placed the key into the symbol, feeling the vibration pulse through me as I did. The moment the key clicked into place, the room seemed to explode with energy. A blinding light shot out from the altar, engulfing everything in its path. Noah's face twisted into something unnatural, something ancient. I tried to scream, but the light swallowed my voice. The walls shook. The air was electric with power. And then everything went black. I can hear my heart pounding in my chest as I stand in the attic. The air is thick, as though the room itself is holding its breath, waiting. Every shadow feels like it's alive, crawling across the floor, creeping up the walls. My hands tremble, but I force myself to move forward. I have no choice now. I'm trapped in this house, and there's no way out unless I face whatever hell it holds. The attic door slams shut behind me, as if the house itself is trying to trap me inside. The room is dim, but there's enough light from the flickering bulb overhead to make out the figures standing in the far corner. Silva and Noah, the mother and the child. Only they aren't who they used to be. Silva looks at me, her eyes cold and calculating. The smile on her lips is as thin as a razor blade. "You've come as far, Carl. You must be curious now. You must understand, don't you?" Her voice is calm, unnervingly so, as though she's explaining something trivial, like the weather. But I feel the weight of her words pressing down on me. Noah stands beside her, but it's not the same child I saw earlier. His once innocent face is twisted now, eyes too wide, too knowing. His skin is unnaturally pale, almost translucent, like the life has been drained out of him. His hair is matted, sticking to his forehead, and his gaze is so empty, so hollow, it chills me to the bone. He looks at me like I'm a stranger, a piece of furniture, something unimportant. "Carl," Noah's voice is raspy, unnatural. "You shouldn't have come here. You've made the choice. You're part of it now." I swallow hard, my throat dry as sandpaper. Part of what? I manage to choke out, though my legs feel like they might give way beneath me. "The ritual," Silva answers smoothly. "This house has been waiting for someone like you. You were chosen. You're the last piece we need." Her eyes glitter with something dark, something ancient. "Noah's time is almost over. He needs to be reborn, and you..." She pauses, letting the silence hang thick between us. "You're the sacrifice." My stomach lurches. The words don't make sense, but I can feel the truth of them crawling through my veins. I back up a step, but the walls are closing in. The air feels heavier, like the house itself is pushing me toward them. No, I say, my voice barely a whisper. This isn't real. This is all in my head. Silva shakes her head slowly, almost pitying. No, Carl. It's real. And now, you'll play your part. You'll open the door for Noah, for the curse. You'll help us break free. I try to run, but I'm frozen in place. My legs won't move. My body betrays me, and I can't even look away from their eyes. Those dark, empty eyes. I know they want me to break, to give in, but something inside me refuses. I won't be a part of whatever they're planning. Not like this. I lunge at them, desperate, reaching for anything to fight back. My hands find a shard of broken glass from shattered frame. I don't even know what I'm doing, but the anger and fear surge through me like a tidal wave. I swing the shard at Silva, but she steps back effortlessly, her smile widening. You're wasting your time, Carl. She's taunting me, savoring the moment. You can't stop what's coming. Noah begins to move then, slow and deliberate. His steps don't make a sound, but every movement feels like it's dragging me deeper into the darkness. The closer he gets, the more I feel the weight of the house pressing down on me. The walls seem to pulse, the floorboards groaning as if alive, as if they, too, are part of this sick ritual. I can't breathe. I can't think straight. My mind races, trying to process everything that's happening. This isn't just some haunted house. It's alive. The house itself is part of this curse, part of this ritual, and I'm the final piece they need to complete it. No. I breathe out, my voice barely audible, more a plea than anything. Please, I don't want to be part of this. But Silva just looks at me, her expression unreadable, and Noah's eyes, those hollow, unfeeling eyes, pierce through me, into my soul. I'm sorry, Carl, Silva says softly, almost lovingly. But you don't have a choice. No one does. And then, without warning, the air in the attic grows colder. Frost creeping along the edges of the floor, swirling in the corners. The shadows shift, growing longer, darker. I feel it then, a pressure like something is pushing against my chest, suffocating me. Noah's form flickers like a mirage, and for a split second, I think I see something else, something much darker, much older. His smile stretches impossibly wide, showing teeth that are too sharp, too many. This isn't a child anymore. This is a thing, a creature. I reach for the glass shard again, desperate, knowing it won't save me but unable to stop myself. But as I raise it, a sharp pain shoots through my head, blinding me. The house screams at me in a language I can't understand. The walls seem to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. The house is closing in, and everything in me knows, this is it. I close my eyes, bracing for whatever comes next. The last thing I hear is Silva's cold, calculating voice. It's too late, Carl. Then, everything goes black. I stumbled out of the mansion's front door, my heart pounding, chest heaving as if I had been running for hours. My legs felt like jelly, barely holding me up as I stepped into the dense fog that surrounded the house like a suffocating blanket. The air was thick, damp, and tasted of something metallic, like the remnants of blood and iron. My breath came in shallow gasps, and every step I took felt heavier than the last. I didn't look back, but I could feel the weight of the house pressing on my shoulders, as if it were watching me leave, knowing it would have its grip on me forever. The fog seemed to pull me in, swirling around my feet, hiding the world behind it. It was eerily quiet, and for a moment, I wondered if I had left the nightmare behind or if it had followed me out. The mansion, with all its secrets and horrors, loomed just behind me, its towering form barely visible through the mist. I didn't know if I was free or just momentarily escaping something that would never truly let go. The rules, Silva's cold voice, and Noah's empty eyes still echoed in my mind. I could still hear the creaks of the mansion's floors under my weight, the whisper of the wind that had carried words that weren't meant to be heard. It all felt unreal, like a nightmare that you wake up from, but can't shake off. I kept walking, pushing through the fog, unsure where I was going. The streetlights were dim, their flickering glow casting shadows that seemed to stretch out longer than they should. Every sound, every rustle of the wind, made my skin crawl. I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was out there, watching me. It wasn't just paranoia. It felt like a presence. Like the house had sent something after me, determined to make sure I never escaped. I don't know how far I walked. Time lost all meaning once I stepped outside the mansion. My thoughts were a jumbled mess: fear, disbelief, and a sinking feeling that wouldn't go away. I kept thinking about what I'd seen, what I'd heard, the attic, the symbols, Silva's calm, cold demeanor as she explained the ritual. It all made sense now, the pieces falling into place like a twisted puzzle I couldn't undo. Noah. Noah wasn't a child. Not really. He had become something else, something that had been waiting, growing, hidden behind innocent eyes. I could still see his face, his eyes, dark and knowing, like he'd been born for this. Maybe I was never meant to be just a babysitter. Maybe I had always been the sacrifice, the final piece needed to complete the ritual. I kept my eyes on the road ahead, afraid to look over my shoulder. I didn't know what I'd see if I did. The fog seemed to stretch on forever, swallowing the world around me. My legs were starting to give out, but I couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. Not until I was far away from that place. As I walked, I couldn't escape the nagging feeling that I hadn't really left. That the mansion, its curse, its power, was following me, curling its fingers around my throat, waiting for the right moment to strike. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I reached the first sign of civilization, an old gas station on the outskirts of town. The lights were dim, flickering above a row of dusty pumps. I walked to the door and stepped inside, hoping for some sense of normalcy, but the place felt wrong. The air was thick with the smell of old coffee and stale cigarettes. The attendant behind the counter looked at me for a moment, his eyes narrowing as if he recognized something in me that I couldn't see. He said nothing, just nodded as I approached the counter. I grabbed a bottle of water, paying quickly, and left without saying a word. I wasn't sure if I was trying to outrun the memories, or if I was just looking for something to anchor me to the present. But no matter how hard I tried to focus on the simple task of getting back to a normal life, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house had marked me. It had claimed me, and I was now a part of its twisted story. As I left the gas station, the fog seemed to grow thicker, more oppressive. I couldn't see more than a few feet in front of me, and every step felt like I was walking deeper into a nightmare. I don't know when it happened, but at some point, I realized the truth. I hadn't escaped. I had been marked, and no matter how far I ran, the mansion would always be a part of me. Its curse had followed me, like a shadow that never left, a presence that would haunt me for the rest of my life. I thought about turning back. I thought about going to the police, about telling someone, anyone, what had happened. But I knew that wouldn't work. The mansion's secrets were buried too deep. Silva's words echoed in my head. "You're part of it now, Carl. You can't escape." And she was right. I wasn't free. Not yet. The fog swallowed me whole, and I realized I would never truly leave that house. It would always be there, just beneath the surface of my thoughts, waiting for the right moment to pull me back into its dark embrace. And no matter where I went, the mansion would always be with me. Months have passed since I left that damn mansion. I try to tell myself that it's over, that it's just a bad memory, a nightmare I can't seem to shake off. But I know better now. I know it's not over. Every time I close my eyes, I see the faces. Not just Silva, but Noah too. His eyes, empty and hollow, staring at me, as if he's waiting for me to return. I can feel it in the quiet of the night, a presence that lingers just outside my reach. It's like something is still watching me, waiting. I've moved out of the city, tried to bury myself in a new life. A small apartment on the outskirts of town, where no one knows my name or the horrors that followed me. It should have been enough to escape, to forget. But even here, in the silence of the night, I can feel it creeping in. The fog rolls in most evenings now, thick and suffocating, just like the one that blanketed the mansion that night. I can't shake the feeling that it's all still there. That place, the house, the curse, it's all watching me, lurking just beneath the surface. I don't talk about it. I don't tell anyone what really happened. Who would believe me? I barely believe it myself. It feels like a part of me is still there, trapped inside those walls. Every so often, I'll hear a sound, a soft hum, like the walls themselves are alive again. The whispers that echoed through the mansion, just before it all went to hell, find their way back to me. They remind me of the rules I broke, the warnings I ignored. No matter how hard I try, I can't get rid of the feeling that I'm not alone. I'll be walking down the street, and it'll hit me. A shiver, a chill, like someone just brushed past me. I'll turn, expecting to see someone, but there's no one there. Only the fog, creeping in like it always does. And sometimes, when I'm alone, I think I see him. Noah, just standing in the distance, watching. But when I blink, he's gone. I can still hear his voice too. Faint but clear. You're part of it now. The money I took that night, the $500, is long gone. I never needed it. I would have paid anything to forget, to unsee what I saw. But the curse isn't something you can pay away. And now, every so often, I find myself wondering if the mansion is waiting for me, if it needs me to come back, to finish what I started. Because I know one thing for sure. There are rules, and the house always gets its way in the end. It's not over. It's never over. And I can feel it. The curse lingers. The third story. The storm outside was the kind that gnawed at your nerves, the kind that whispered, something's wrong, even if you couldn't quite put your finger on why. The rain smacked against the windows, and the wind screeched like a dying animal caught in a trap. I could hear it all, but it felt miles away, like it wasn't even real. It wasn't the storm that had me on edge. It was the silence in the room, pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't shake. I was alone. Of course I was alone. It was always me, sitting at this desk, with nothing but the steady hum of old electronics and the occasional distant thud of a call coming in. It wasn't a glamorous job, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it paid the bills. I didn't expect much. I just expected the usual, calls about accidents, lost pets, some kid in trouble. Nothing to get too worked up over. But tonight felt different. I couldn't explain it. Maybe it was the storm, how it had swallowed up the entire town, or maybe it was the fact that everything seemed too quiet. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. I stared at the blinking light on the phone in front of me. I could hear the sound of my own breath, too loud in the stillness, and then it came. The phone rang. Routine, I told myself. Another call. 911. What's your emergency? I answered, pushing my doubts away. I'd answered 1,000 calls before. This was nothing. The voice on the other end wasn't what I expected. It wasn't frantic or panicked, like most callers. Instead, it was calm, too familiar. Robert, the voice said, and I froze. It wasn't just the name that stopped me. It was the tone. The voice, smooth, steady, like it belonged to someone I knew. You have to listen. It's already started. I leaned forward, my fingers gripping the edges of the desk. It wasn't just the voice. Something about the words, the way they hung in the air like a heavy fog, made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Who is this? I asked, but my voice sounded weak, even to me. The words caught in my throat, and for a moment, I wondered if I was dreaming. I'm you, Robert, the voice continued. I'm calling from the future. It's not over. You can't stop it. You're too late. My heart thudded in my chest. This couldn't be real. My eyes darted to the clock on the wall, watching the seconds tick by, but they didn't feel real either. Time seemed to stretch, like everything around me was warping, shifting. The storm outside pounded against the building, a constant reminder of the madness that seemed to be inching its way closer to me. Who is this? I asked again, this time with more force. But the voice didn't answer. Instead, it just faded. There was a sudden, sharp click, and then the line went dead. I sat there, the receiver still pressed against my ear, staring at the phone in disbelief. My fingers were trembling. I pulled the receiver away and stared at the dark screen in front of me. It was just static. No number. No trace of where the call had come from. Was it a prank? Some sick joke? I shook my head, trying to clear the fog that had settled in my mind. I needed to get a grip. But then, my phone rang again. The same number. Same voice. Robert, you have to stop it. This time, I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just sat there, staring at the phone, my mind racing. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. I had always believed in the routine. I had always trusted that the night would pass like every other night. But as the storm howled outside, and that eerie voice echoed in my head, I knew this night was different. And whatever was coming, I wasn't prepared for it. The rain hit the windows like 1,000 little fists, each drop tapping harder than the last. The storm outside had turned vicious. The wind screeched, rattling the old glass, and I could feel the cold creeping in from every crack and crevice in the building. It was the kind of night where even the lights seemed to tremble, flickering every now and then like they might give up entirely. I leaned back in my chair, stretching my stiff neck. My eyes burned, tired from staring at the same screens all night. There was nothing new, nothing different. Just the endless hum of the night shift. The usual calls, the kind I had answered 100 times before. Car accidents, noise complaints, a drunk kid locked out his house. It was all the same. My hand hovered over the receiver when the next call came in. The screen flashed a number, unfamiliar like every other emergency call, but something about it made my pulse quicken. A nagging feeling scratched at the back of my mind, though I couldn't place why. I picked up the phone and braced myself for the usual. 911. What's your emergency? My voice was steady, practiced, even though a part of me was still uneasy. But what came next wasn't anything I expected. Robert, you have to listen. The voice that came through wasn't just a voice. It was mine. My own voice. Clear and precise, but with a raw edge to it that I didn't recognize. There was a tension in it. Fear, desperation. It sent a shiver down my spine, despite the warmth of the dispatch room. Who is this? I asked, trying to keep the quiver out of my voice. I glanced at the phone, as if there was some way to trace the call, but it was a dead end. I'm you, Robert. The voice was calm now, almost too calm. I'm calling from the future. It's already started. You're too late. My hand tightened on the receiver. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. My mind scrambled for an explanation. Was this some kind of joke? A prank? But the words came with such urgency, such weight, that I couldn't brush it off. What do you mean? I asked, though my own voice felt foreign in my ears. You have to stop it, the voice on the other end continued, growing frantic. You can't let it happen again. It's too late to fix it now, but you have to understand, you're going to make the same mistake. The same mistake as before. My heart started to pound harder. I pulled the phone away from my ear, staring at it like it might somehow reveal the truth to me. How could this be happening? Who was playing the sick game? But then the voice was back, as if it had never stopped. Robert, listen to me. It's not just a call. It's a warning. The voice faltered for a moment, and I could hear a sharp breath, like whoever was on the other end was trying to calm themselves. I'm trapped, Robert. And you'll be too if you don't do something now. A wave of nausea hit me. My head was spinning. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, louder than the storm outside. Who are you? What do you want from me? The voice paused, as if weighing the answer. When it spoke again, there was an edge of finality to it. You'll understand soon. You'll see what I mean. Just remember this, Robert. You can't save yourself. You can't fix what's already been broken. Before I could ask another question, before I could even process what I was hearing, the line went dead. I sat there, frozen. My grip on the phone was tight, my knuckles white. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the words that echoed in my ears. My future self? Trapped? What did that even mean? What was going on? The room felt colder now, despite the heater running in the corner. The storm outside had grown even worse, the wind howling like it was angry, trying to tear the building apart. I could feel the weight of something pressing on my chest, something heavy, like I was being suffocated by the silence that followed the call. It didn't make sense. It couldn't. But that voice, my voice, it was real. That much I knew for sure. I glanced at the phone, my mind racing with 1,000 questions, but none of them had answers. The number was gone, wiped clean from the screen. There was no trace, no way to track where the call had come from. Just emptiness. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing. I should have brushed it off, ignored it, moved on to the next call. That's what I should have done. But I couldn't. Something about that voice, something about the way it spoke to me, it lodged itself in my brain. It made my skin crawl, but it also made my blood run cold with a fear I hadn't felt in years. I had to know what it meant. What did it mean for me? And why in the hell was I getting a call for myself? Before I could think any more about it, the phone rang again. I hesitated for only a second before I picked it up. But when I did, the words I heard next almost stopped my heart completely. Robert, it's starting again. I knew that voice. It was mine, and I wasn't sure whether to be terrified, confused, or both. I couldn't shake the unease. The first call, sure, it was strange, unnerving even, but I chalked it up to a prank or a glitch. But then, the phone rang again, just a few minutes later, and I felt that same chill crawl down my spine. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 2:37 a.m. The storm outside had grown fiercer, the wind howling so loudly that the building almost seemed to shake. The power flickered again, but I had learned to ignore it. The lights always came back on. It was the storm that kept my mind restless. I reached for the receiver, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Another call. Another emergency. No doubt. That's what I thought. But as soon as I pressed the headset to my ear, I froze. It wasn't a typical caller. 911. What's your emergency? I said, my voice steady, my hands already adjusting to the routine of the job. There was a pause, longer than usual. Then the voice came through, but it wasn't a voice I was expecting. It was deep, distorted, like something was wrong with the signal. But there was something else. It was familiar, eerily familiar. Robert, you never solved it. You never solved her case. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. My breath caught. My pulse quickened. I felt my stomach twist as if I'd swallowed something cold. The missing woman. Jane Doe. The case that had been haunting me for months. It wasn't just the call earlier. It was this one. The words echoed in my mind, a cold reminder of the unfinished business that had been gnawing at me for too long. I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. My heart raced as I tried to make sense of it. Was it a prank? Was someone messing with me? No one could know about that case. No one but me and the few officers still working on it. Who is this? I asked, my voice shaking just a little. I couldn't help it. The call itself was too strange, too unsettling. The voice didn't respond right away. It lingered in silence, but then it spoke again, its tone calm yet laced with a sense of urgency. You need to listen carefully, Robert. It's all connected. The truth you're searching for, it's out there, waiting for you. My fingers gripped the receiver tighter. The words seemed to claw at me, pulling me deeper into the darkness of my own mind. The voice spoke with such authority, but it was also desperate, as though it was trying to warn me of something. What are you talking about? I muttered, more to myself than to the voice on the other end. You never solved it, the voice repeated. You never solved her case. There was a strange echo in the way it said it, as if it was trying to drill the words into me. And it's not over. It's never over, Robert. I felt my body tense. There was no mistake now. This call was linked to Jane's disappearance. But how? Why would someone, this person, be calling me with details only I would understand? There was no way this could be a coincidence. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I tried to collect myself, to regain the composure I was known for. Who is this? I repeated, my voice sharp now, demanding an answer. What do you want? But instead of an answer, the line crackled, a low, unsettling sound that made the pit of my stomach churn. Then the voice spoke again, but this time, it was different. It was more cryptic, almost like a riddle I wasn't sure how to solve. Robert, there are things you don't know, things you don't understand. You'll never solve it, not unless you listen to me. A silence followed that felt suffocating. I wanted to shout into the phone, to demand that they explain themselves, but something in my gut held me back. I knew, somehow, that the answer I sought wasn't going to come easily. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the line went dead. I sat there for a moment, the receiver still pressed to my ear, my heart pounding in my chest. The storm outside was now a roar, shaking the walls of the building as though nature itself was trying to warn me. The wind whipped against the windows, making them rattle in their frames. But all I could hear was the faint hum of the phone line, the echo of the voice still lingering in my mind. I slowly set the receiver down, my hands trembling. The room felt colder now, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on me. I looked at the flashing screen of my computer, where the emergency system displayed the list of calls I had answered tonight. It was the same as always, nothing special. But everything had changed. That call, it had been more than just a random person. It had been a warning. I rubbed my forehead, trying to shake off the lingering anxiety. My thoughts raced, bouncing between the missing woman's case, the cryptic voice on the phone, and a nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong. I glanced at the clock again. 2:53 a.m. The storm outside showed no sign of letting up, and neither did my anxiety. Another call could come at any moment. I needed to focus. I needed to be ready. But deep down I knew it. I hadn't just received a call. I had received a clue. And it was leading me somewhere I wasn't sure I was ready to go. I don't know when exactly I stopped hearing the storm outside. Maybe it was when I finally let the silence settle over me. The hum of the dispatch center, my heartbeat, and the faint buzz of the flickering lights becoming louder than the storm itself. The phone hasn't rung since that second call, the one where the voice on the other end warned me about the truth waiting out there, hidden in plain sight. But now, it feels like something is coming. Something I can't see yet, but I can feel in my gut, tugging at me. The feeling of being watched, like a predator, is lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment. I get up, my chair creaking beneath me, the only sound filling the stillness. The case. Jane Doe's case. I try not to think about it, but it keeps coming back. Every time the phone rings, it drags me back to it, back to the image of that missing woman. The last known photo of her taken on the outskirts of town, smiling like she had nothing to fear. She vanished like she was never meant to be found. The case has haunted me since I started, but now, it's like it's starting to suffocate me. I sit back down, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I'm not supposed to go digging into old cases, not like this. But something pulls me forward. I start typing. Dave Mercer. The name had been on the tip of my tongue earlier. I don't even know why it didn't click before. Dave Mercer was a former detective in this town. He was obsessed with unsolved cases. Jane Doe's case, especially. That's what I remember from the files, the brief mentions, the murmurs in the break room. Dave's obsession with her disappearance was never a secret. But it wasn't just Jane. There were others. There were whispers that Dave had been close to cracking other cases. But something about him started to slip. People in the department stopped trusting him. He became fixated. Too fixated. They pulled him off active cases, removed him from the field. I don't know why exactly, but there were rumors. That's the problem with small towns. Rumors spread like wildfire. As I pull up his file, my stomach twists. I remember the old stories about him. Some said he cracked under the pressure of the job, his mind too consumed with the darkness he uncovered. Others said he just couldn't let go of the cases. Whatever the reason, he was gone. But he never stopped lurking in the background. He wasn't out of the game. There's something strange about Dave's file. His name is listed under old records, but I find something more recent. A string of disturbing messages, left on voicemail, posted in anonymous letters, slipped under doors. Cryptic clues, riddles, and notes with no return addresses, all related to unsolved cases. Most were from years ago, but a few were just months before Jane disappeared. The hair on the back of my neck stands up. How did I miss this? How did I not see that Dave Mercer was still involved, still pushing the investigation forward from the shadows? I look at the letters, each one twisted and nonsensical in its own way, but they all circle back to one thing: Jane. They all reference her case. Some of them directly challenge the police force, asking why no one had looked closer, why the truth was so close, yet everyone turned away. And the most unsettling part, each letter ended with the same signature, a friend of Jane's. I lean back in my chair, trying to process what I'm seeing. My breath feels shallow. It's as if Dave had been orchestrating the search all along, guiding it from the sidelines, pulling the strings, waiting for someone to take the bait. But I can't shake the feeling that this isn't some simple obsession. There's something deeper, something sinister. I start researching Dave's whereabouts, digging through public records. The more I read, the more unsettling details surface. Dave had been in the same town as me, working under a different alias, living off the radar. But the more I look, the more his name pops up, each time tied to an unsolved case. But there's one thing I notice that ties everything together: the dates. Every time Dave's name appears, something unusual happens. A murder, a disappearance, or an unexplained event. The pattern is there, but it's not a pattern of coincidence. It's a trail leading to... I slam my fist down on the desk, the sudden noise startling me. This is too much. It doesn't make sense. Why would Dave be connected to all this? What does he want from me? A knock on the door pulls me from my thoughts. It's not a usual knock. It's urgent, almost frantic. I get up, my heart racing, and pull open the door. The night is silent now, the storm having passed, but the unease lingers. Standing there is one of the officers from the local precinct. "We've got a problem, Robert," he says, his voice low. "What is it?" I ask, trying to keep my cool. "It's Dave Mercer. He's been spotted, and he's heading this way." A chill runs down my spine. I can feel the ground shifting beneath me. Whatever this is, it's real. Dave is no longer hiding in the shadows. He's coming for me. I don't know what to do next, but I do know one thing. The game has just started. The storm outside howls like a wild animal, battering the windows with a fury I haven't seen in years. Each gust of wind sends the trees outside bending low, their branches whipping around as though trying to claw their way into the building. The lights flicker, and for a moment, I wonder if I'm imagining things. But I'm not. My skin tingles with the strange sense that something terrible is about to happen. I've been sitting here for hours, staring at the blinking light on the phone, waiting for another call. I don't know why I'm waiting. I'm exhausted, my head aching, my mind whirling with thoughts I can't fully process. But I can't leave. Something's keeping me here, rooted to this chair in front of the desk. I feel like I'm on the edge of a precipice, and every time I try to turn away, I'm pulled back in. And then it happens. The phone rings again. My heart leaps into my throat, and I snatch up the receiver without thinking. My hand shakes, but I ignore it, trying to steady my breathing. The voice on the other end is the same as before. It's my voice. But this time, there's a tremor in it, like a crack in the foundation of my sanity. The calm is gone. What's left is desperation. Robert, you don't have much time left. It's already too late for you. It's already started. The words echo in my ears, and I feel cold, like something is creeping up my spine. The storm outside rages louder, as if it's feeding off the fear crawling through my veins. I try to speak, to ask questions, but the words catch in my throat. My mind is too scrambled, too terrified to form a coherent thought. How is this even possible? How is this happening? The voice continues, low and urgent. Everything you thought you knew, Robert, is wrong. You're not just a 911 operator. You're a part of something much bigger, much darker, and you won't be able to stop it this time. You'll make the same mistake, the same one you made before. Before? What the hell does that mean? I never made any mistake. I've always done my job. I've always been careful, methodical. But the longer I sit there, listening to the voice, the more my thoughts scatter like leaves in the wind. My hands are cold now, clammy, and I can feel the sweat beading on my forehead. What mistake? Who is this? I can barely force the words out, but I have to know. I need to understand. The voice pauses, and for a second, all I hear is the static and the crackling of the storm. And then, it speaks again, softer this time. You'll see. You'll see when it's too late. But there's still time to stop it, Robert. You just have to listen to me. I feel a tightness in my chest, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I'm about to respond when the voice cuts off. The line goes dead. Silence fills the room, thick and suffocating. My heart pounds in my ears. I drop the receiver, my fingers trembling. I sit there for a long time, too afraid to move, too afraid to think. But I know one thing for sure. I can't ignore this anymore. The pieces of the puzzle are starting to fall into place, but it's like I'm staring at a jumbled mess of shapes I can't understand. My mind flashes back to the missing woman, Jane Doe. Her case has haunted me for months. Every detail, every report, it all haunts me like a shadow I can't outrun. But what if this isn't just about Jane? What if it's about something bigger? Something I'm too blind to see? I jump up suddenly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I grab my jacket from the back of the chair and head for the door. I need answers, and I need them now. My footsteps echo down the narrow hallway of the 911 center as I make my way to the back office. I need the records, any clue, anything that might shed light on this madness. The file on Jane's disappearance is right where I left it, buried under a mountain of other cases, just another forgotten name. I pull it open, my hands shaking as I flip through the pages. Nothing new, nothing that stands out. But then, my eyes catch on something strange, an old report, one I don't remember seeing before. It's buried under the case notes like it was never meant to be found. I pull it out and read the first few lines. Unexplained connection to Dave Mercer. Investigation remains open. I freeze. My pulse spikes. Dave Mercer. The detective who was obsessed with Jane's case. The man who was removed from the investigation for reasons I've never understood. The man who has been sending me cryptic messages, who has been watching me for longer than I care to admit. I slam the file shut. It's all connected. All of it. The calls, the storm, Jane's disappearance. It's all tied to Dave. I don't know how or why, but it's like a sick game he's been playing with me. A game where I'm both the player and the pawn. I can feel it now, his shadow looming over me, just out of sight, pulling strings that I can't see. I need to confront him. I need to find him. But even as I prepare to leave, my phone rings again. My breath catches in my throat as I stare at the screen. It's him, Dave. I know it. The storm outside reaches its peak. The phone in my hand feels like a weight, a chain, pulling me into the dark. I hesitate, but only for a moment. This time, I won't ignore the call. I answer. Robert, the voice on the other end is cold, almost mocking. I told you, you make the same mistake. And now it's too late. I grip the phone harder, my knuckles white. I can't back down. I can't let him win. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Dave. I say, the words coming out sharper than I expected. But the voice just laughs, low and menacing. You'll be afraid of the storm, Robert. Because it's not over. It's just begun. And that's when I realize he's been controlling this. The storm, the calls, everything. It was all part of his plan. I'm already too late. The night felt like it was closing in on me, the storm outside tearing at the world like a beast on a rampage. My footsteps echoed in the emptiness of Dave Mercer's house, the walls groaning under the weight of the wind. The house was dark, old, and forgotten, just like everything else in this damn town. The smell of dust and mildew clung to the air, making it hard to breathe, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. Dave's house was a place of shadows. It felt like the kind of place you step into when you've already made up your mind to go somewhere dark. But I didn't have a choice anymore. I had to know the truth. I found him in the living room, sitting in a worn armchair, staring out the window into the storm. His face was gaunt, eyes sunken, but there was something calm about him, like he had been expecting me. That calm was unsettling. Robert, he said, his voice low, almost amused. You've been listening to the wrong voices. I froze. The words hit me harder than the cold wind outside. He knew. He knew everything. And the way he said it, like this was all some twisted game, made me sick to my stomach. What? I managed to croak. What the hell do you want from me? Dave didn't look at me. His gaze stayed fixed on the rain slashing against the window, the storm as wild as the thoughts spinning in my head. I'm giving you a chance to fix it, he said. But you won't. You'll make the same choice. The same mistake. I didn't understand. Fix what? My voice was shaking now, despite the anger burning inside me. What are you talking about? He finally turned to face me, and when he did, there was no malice in his eyes, just a kind of resigned understanding. It was almost worse than hate. Everything you've been feeling, those calls, the messages, the guilt, it's all part of it. You've been living this nightmare over and over, Robert. The missing woman. The case that never ended. You think it's about Jane Doe, but it's not. It's about you. You're the one who's been trapped in this, and I've been guiding you, pushing you. I stumbled back, the words hitting me like bricks. What do you mean trapped? I whispered, though I already had an idea. Are you telling me this is all some kind of game to you? Dave's lips curled slightly, a half smile that was anything but comforting. It's not a game. It's a cycle. I made sure of that. You'll never escape it, Robert. You're going to make the same choice, the same mistake, every time. And every time you fail, I'll be here, watching. His words clawed at my mind, digging deep into places I didn't want to think about. The missing woman, Jane Doe, had been the key to all of this, hadn't she? The case had consumed me, haunted me, but now it felt like it had all been orchestrated. I wasn't solving a mystery. I was reliving a nightmare Dave had set in motion. No, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper, the weight of it sinking in. No, I'm not like you. I won't let you control me. But even as I said it, I knew. I knew there was no escaping. Dave had already won. I'd been playing into his hands from the start, drawn in by the cryptic calls, the strange warnings. Every step I took had led me here, to him, to this moment. It was all connected. The storm outside, the storm inside my mind, and now, the storm that had been waiting for me in this house. Dave's eyes never left mine. You'll do it again, Robert. You'll answer the call. You'll follow the clues. And you'll make the same mistake. I felt a chill sweep through me. It wasn't just the storm. It was something deeper. Dave wasn't just some old detective obsessed with the case. He was part of something darker, something that had been dragging me into it, piece by piece. And now, I was here, facing the truth I'd never wanted to see. I backed away slowly, my heart racing. My mind screamed at me to leave, to run, but something in my chest told me I was already too late. It wasn't just about Jane Doe anymore. It was about me, about the choices I'd made, about the guilt that had festered inside me since that first call. "You don't get to do this," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and defiance. "I'm not going to let you make me like you." Dave tilted his head, as though he were genuinely disappointed. "You don't have a choice, Robert. You never did." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. I could feel it, the weight of everything. Every call, every missed warning, every second of this twisted night. And in that moment, I knew. I knew I was just another pawn in Dave's game, and there was no escaping it. The storm outside screamed louder, but I couldn't tell if it was the wind or my own heartbeat. As I turned to leave, something in me broke. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was acceptance. I was trapped, and there was no way out. The storm had passed, leaving behind a quiet that felt unnatural. The wind had died down, the rain no longer hammered the windows, and the silence inside the dispatch center seemed to stretch on, heavy and suffocating. I sat at my desk, staring at the dark screen of the monitor in front of me. My hands were still shaking, my mind reeling from everything that had happened. I was exhausted, mentally, physically, emotionally drained. It felt like I'd been trapped in a nightmare, one that refused to end. Dave's words echoed in my head, a constant reminder that I had been caught in his twisted game. He had manipulated me, pushed me to the brink, and now I was lost. There was no escaping it. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was nearly time for the shift to end. Maybe after this, I could go home, maybe get some sleep. But somehow, the thought of going home felt wrong, like I was still running from something. I didn't want to answer the phone, but the ringing cut through my thoughts, sharp and insistent. The screen flashed to life, the usual red blinking light signaling an incoming call. I hesitated, staring at the phone like it was a snake ready to strike. I took a deep breath, my fingers trembling as I reached for the receiver. 911, what's your emergency? My voice came out flat, detached, like I was trying to shield myself from whatever this call might be. But then, the voice on the other end, it wasn't like the others. It wasn't some stranger, some cryptic figure. No, it was my own voice. Robert. My heart skipped a beat. I froze, the blood draining from my face. It was me. I recognized the tone, the slight tremor, the way the words felt heavy in the air. It was like I was hearing myself from the other side of the phone, from some dark, twisted future. Robert, it's starting again. My chest tightened, and I could hardly breathe. My throat went dry, the words stuck in my mouth like sandpaper. The world around me blurred as I struggled to comprehend what was happening. How is this possible? How was my voice on the other end of the line? I wanted to slam the phone down, to end the call, to stop whatever this was. But I couldn't. I couldn't move. My body felt frozen, trapped in the same cycle that had been dragging me deeper into madness. Who is this? I managed to rasp out, the words barely leaving my lips. My voice cracked, betraying my fear. It's me. You. The voice on the other end was soft, familiar, but it carried a weight that sent a chill down my spine. The storm never really ended, Robert, and neither will I. I'm always here, always waiting. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The storm never really ended? What the hell did that mean? Was this some kind of joke? But I could hear it, the truth in the voice. It was like I was hearing my own fear reflected back at me, a twisted echo of everything I'd tried to ignore. The calls, the storm, the haunting sense that something had gone wrong, something I had missed. My hand trembled as I clutched the receiver tighter, my pulse racing. I wanted to scream, to shout, to demand answers. But I couldn't. The air in the room grew thick, suffocating, and I felt like I was drowning. Who are you? I asked again, the question barely more than a whisper. My voice barely recognized itself. I'm you, Robert. The one who didn't solve it. The one who never escaped. I'm the one who's been here all along, stuck in the storm. The voice was almost soothing, as if it knew everything about me, every crack in my mind. And you're me, trapped in the same place. You're going to make the same mistake again. You're going to fail. And this time, it'll be worse. The words sent a shiver down my spine. A failure. That's what I was. I had failed to solve the case, failed to stop the storm. I thought I had finished it all, but it never ended, did it? I was stuck in the same loop, the same twisted game that Dave had set in motion. The same guilt, the same regret. It was all coming back. Please, I whispered, my voice cracking. Please, tell me what's happening. Tell me how to fix it. But there was no answer. Just silence. A silence so deep, it felt like the world had stopped moving altogether. The call ended, the line going dead. But the silence that followed was worse than any noise. It was like the calm before a storm that would never pass. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing. What was going on? What had just happened? And then it hit me. The call wasn't just from the future. It was from me. From a version of me that never escaped the cycle. A version of me that was doomed to relive the same nightmare over and over again. The storm wasn't just outside. It was inside me. I had been running from it, trying to outrun it. But it was always there, always waiting to pull me back in. And now I was trapped. There was no way out. No escape. I slowly set the receiver down, my hands still shaking. The room felt colder than it had a moment ago. The storm was over, but the darkness inside me was just beginning to settle in. I didn't know how much longer I could keep going, but I knew one thing for sure. I was never getting out of this. Not now. Not ever. I stared at the phone, waiting for the next call, because I knew it was coming. It always came, and I would answer it. Every time. The fourth story. The bus hit a bump, throwing me forward into the stiff seat in front of me. I blinked, trying to clear the fuzz in my mind. I hadn't slept much the night before. Too much anticipation. Too many questions swirling around in my head. But as the tires crunched over the gravel road, something in my gut tightened, telling me that this wasn't just any ordinary summer camp. I glanced out the window at the thick forest surrounding us. The trees stood like silent giants, their branches swaying slightly, as though they were whispering secrets to one another. The air had a damp, earthy smell, and I could almost taste the pine needles in the breeze. It was almost too quiet out here. No traffic, no city sounds, just the hum of the engine and the occasional bird call. The kind of quiet that made your ears ring when there was nothing else to hear. Camp Waverly. I muttered to myself. It sounded innocent enough, like any other camp for troubled teens or kids looking for a break from their ordinary lives. But there was something about the place, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, that felt off. I tried to shake the feeling, but it lingered. The bus finally slowed to a halt, and the doors creaked open. I gathered my bag and stood, stepping out into the thick, sticky air. The camp looked like something straight out of a postcard. Log cabins lined up in neat rows, a large lake shimmering in the distance. The whole place nestled deep in the woods. There was an undeniable beauty to it, but the deeper I looked, the more the place seemed to hide in shadows. A tall, young guy in a red Camp Waverly t-shirt stepped forward to greet us. He had dark hair, eyes that sparkled like he knew all the secrets, and a smile that was too perfect to be real. "Welcome to Camp Waverly," he said, his voice smooth like honey. "My name's James, and I'll be your counselor this summer. I promise you, it's going to be a time you'll never forget." His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. But then again, what do you expect from a summer camp counselor? I tried to force a smile and nodded, though I wasn't sure why. I didn't want to be here. Not really. I was just here because my mom thought it'd be good for me, a way to get away from it all. A few weeks of fresh air and nature were supposed to fix whatever was wrong with me, according to her. But I wasn't convinced. The other campers seemed excited, chattering amongst themselves as they grabbed their bags and followed James down the path toward the cabins. I trailed behind them, the sounds of laughter and footsteps echoing in the quiet woods. It was all so normal. Too normal. Almost as if it was hiding something. As I made my way toward the cabins, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My skin prickled, and I had to force myself to breathe normally. It was just the woods, I told myself. Just the isolation. Nothing more. But something in me knew that wasn't true. We reached our cabin, a large, weathered building tucked in a quiet corner of the campgrounds. James led us inside and started giving us the usual camp spiel. "You'll be sharing this cabin with 6 others. Try to keep it tidy. Camp rules are simple. Respect each other, respect the land, and follow the schedule. And, of course, remember, Camp Waverly has a history. So don't be afraid to ask if you hear something strange or feel uncomfortable." He paused, as if to let the weight of his words sink in. "It's a big place, and the woods can feel strange at night." His voice dropped lower on the last part, and I couldn't help but notice how his gaze seemed to linger a little longer than necessary. I glanced at the other campers. Most of them were laughing, chatting about what they were going to do first, but I could see a few faces that seemed unnerved, like they could sense the tension in the air too. "All right," James continued, snapping me out of my thoughts. "I'll leave you all to settle in. We'll gather by the fire later tonight for the first campfire story. You won't want to miss it." The fire. The stories. Something in the way he said it made my stomach twist. As I entered the cabin and found my bunk, I couldn't stop looking out the window at the trees beyond. There was a strange stillness to the forest, an unnerving quiet that seemed to stretch on forever. Something was wrong. I didn't know what, but I was going to find out. Later that night, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to twinkle, we all gathered around the campfire. The crackling flames flickered in the cool evening air, casting long, dancing shadows across the clearing. The firelight illuminated James's face as he stood, a soft smirk on his lips, his eyes glinting in the orange glow. "All right, everyone," he called out, his voice carrying through the camp. "It's time for the first of many Camp Waverly stories. Some of you might have heard it already. Others might just be hearing it for the first time. But trust me, once you hear it, you'll never forget it." He paused for dramatic effect, letting the silence settle around us like a blanket. "The story of the Waverly Ghost," he said slowly, his voice soft but full of tension. And just like that, I knew the reason I was here had nothing to do with fresh air or camp activities. Something was waiting for me at Camp Waverly. Something dark. Something that wasn't supposed to be here. And I was about to find out exactly what it was. The first few days at Camp Waverly were spent like a blur. New faces, camp songs, and the lingering smell of pine in the air. But there was something about the place that made my skin itch, a quiet discomfort that seemed to follow me like a shadow, always just behind me, never quite in reach, but always there. It started on the second night. I had just finished brushing my teeth, the chill of the bathroom air clinging to my skin, when I stepped outside into the thick, humid night. The camp was quiet, unnaturally so. The usual sounds of chattering campers had died down, replaced by the quiet hum of the trees swaying in the wind. It was almost peaceful, but too peaceful, like the calm before a storm. I wasn't tired. My mind was racing with thoughts of the ghost stories James had told us the night before. I told myself they were just stories, nothing more. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right about this place. I walked towards the lake, hoping the cool air might help clear my head. The path was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the moon filtering through the treetops. The further I went, the more isolated I felt. The trees loomed over me like silent sentinels, their long branches reaching out like fingers, swaying with an eerie rhythm. I could hear the occasional rustle in the underbrush, but when I stopped to listen, everything would fall silent, as if whatever had caused the noise didn't want to be found. I sat down by the edge of the lake, the water reflecting the moonlight in silver streaks. The camp was a distant memory now, swallowed by the dark. Just the wind and the water. That's all I thought it was. Then I heard it. At first, it was so faint I thought I imagined it. A soft shoo, like someone calling my name in the wind. I spun around, expecting to see one of the other campers behind me, but the path was empty, the trees still and silent. I laughed to myself. It was nothing, just the wind. That's all it was. But the shoo came again. This time, it was clearer, sharper, like a whisper from just behind my ear. My heart skipped a beat, and my breath caught in my throat. I felt my skin prickle with cold, despite the warm night air. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. "Nothing." I stood up, my legs stiff, and slowly began to walk back toward the camp. My eyes darted around, scanning the shadows. I knew what I'd heard. Something, or someone, had whispered my name, but there was no one there. Just the trees, the night, and the faint ripples of the water. When I got back to the cabins, I tried to shake it off, but the feeling of being watched didn't leave. Every creak of the wooden floor felt too loud. Every rustle of leaves in the wind seemed too deliberate. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear the whispers in my mind, like an echo bouncing through my thoughts. By the next morning, I had convinced myself it was nothing more than my imagination playing tricks. The whisper could have been a bird, the wind, or maybe even one of the other campers messing with me. But as the day went on, I noticed something strange. It wasn't just me. I overheard a couple of kids talking in the mess hall about hearing strange sounds at night. One of them said they heard someone running outside their cabin, while another swore they saw a shadow moving through the trees. When they spoke, their voices were low, cautious, as if they didn't want to say it out loud, but needed someone to hear it. It made my stomach twist. Later that afternoon, I walked past the counselor's cabin, where James was sitting outside, talking to a few other campers. He noticed me, gave me that same smirk he always had, and motioned for me to come over. "Hey, Christ," he said, his tone light, like nothing was out of the ordinary. "How's the camp treating you? You getting used to it?" "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Everything's fine." He raised an eyebrow, his eyes narrowing, just slightly. "You sure? No strange sounds at night? No weird feelings out by the lake?" My heart skipped again. I wasn't sure if he was just messing with me, or if he really knew something. "It's just the stories, right?" I said, trying to sound casual. "I'm sure it's nothing." James grinned, leaning back in his chair. "You're probably right. Or maybe it's the land itself. Old places like this, they hold memories. Bad ones, sometimes." I wanted to ask him what he meant, but the way he said it, like it wasn't just a story, made the words stick in my throat. I just nodded and walked away, but I couldn't get the feeling out of my head. The whisper, the shadows, the way James talked about the camp, like he knew more than he was letting on. That night, I decided to stay up. I wanted to prove to myself that it was all just in my head. I lay in my bunk, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the camp. The whispers didn't come back, but the feeling of being watched never left. And then, just as I was starting to drift off to sleep, I heard it again, the faintest whisper, so quiet I almost missed it. This time, it was clearer than before. "Christ!" I froze, my blood turning to ice. The day after the campfire story, I found myself unsettled in ways I didn't want to admit. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself it was all just part of the camp experience, the tales and the late-night talks around the fire. But I couldn't quite ignore the way James had looked at me when he told that story. It was like he was daring me to believe it, pushing me into the dark corner of my mind where the unknown could haunt me. I found him the next day by the lake. He was sitting on a weathered wooden bench, one leg crossed over the other, looking out over the water like he was waiting for something. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the camp. I hesitated, but something in me, curiosity, maybe, pulled me toward him. "Hey, James," I said, trying to sound casual. "You really believe in that ghost story you told last night?" He turned his head, a slow smile stretching across his face. It wasn't the kind of smile that made you feel at ease. It was knowing, like he knew something you didn't. "I wouldn't tell if I didn't," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm for the subject. He looked at me for a long moment, like he was studying me, and then gestured for me to sit beside him. I did, though every part of me was screaming not to. Most people laugh at stories like that, right? Like it's just something to get us all riled up, I said, trying to sound dismissive, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. James chuckled, a low, hollow sound that didn't seem to fit the moment. "It's funny how people laugh at things they don't understand. You think this is just a campfire tale, Christ." His eyes narrowed slightly, and the air between us seemed to shift. "You're wrong if you do." I blinked, taken aback by the sudden shift in his tone. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his gaze fixed on the water. "You see, the thing about Camp Waverly is that it's not just the woods, the trees, the lake. It's the land itself. There's something ancient here, something people don't talk about. Not unless they've been here long enough, learned things the hard way." I didn't say anything, but my chest tightened. This wasn't just a story to him. He wasn't trying to entertain. He was trying to warn me. The realization hit me slowly, like the rising tide of the lake beneath us. You want to know the real reason people vanish around here? It's not just kids sneaking off or getting lost in the woods. James continued, his voice lower now, almost a whisper. It's because the land wants them. It calls to them, pulls them in. And once you hear it, once you feel it, it's too late. I couldn't breathe. My mind spun, racing between disbelief and the unsettling possibility that he was telling the truth. Are you saying the ghost isn't just a ghost? It's something more. James nodded, his gaze still locked on the lake. It's not about a single person haunting the camp. No, it's much older than that. It's an entity tied to the land, something that was awakened long ago, before the camp even existed. It feeds off fear, off the idea that something isn't right. And as long as people are scared, as long as they keep telling the stories, it keeps coming back. I shuddered. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. The way he spoke, it wasn't the talk of someone who was just trying to keep an old legend alive. It sounded like someone who had seen the thing firsthand. So what? You're saying it's here right now? I asked, trying to hide the trembling in my voice. James turned his head toward me slowly, his eyes cold and serious. It's always here. It's always watching. And the more you dig, the more you try to ignore it, the more it'll find you. I wanted to laugh it off. I wanted to tell him he was crazy. But the weight of his words hung in the air like a thick fog. Something about the way he spoke made my gut twist. I felt like he wasn't just warning me. He was trying to tell me something, trying to pull me deeper into this twisted little corner of reality where fear wasn't just a feeling, but a living thing. Look, James, I said, forcing my voice steady. You really expect me to believe all this? James stood up suddenly, his expression unreadable. He wasn't smiling anymore. Believe what you want. But when it happens to you, don't say I didn't warn you. He walked away, disappearing into the trees, leaving me alone with the fading light and the haunting sensation that something wasn't quite right about Camp Waverly. As I sat there, staring out at the lake, I couldn't shake the feeling that I just uncovered something I wasn't meant to know. And I wondered, for the first time, if I'd made a terrible mistake by asking James about the legend. Because now, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I wasn't sure I wanted to know the truth anymore. The air was thick with humidity, almost suffocating, as I made my way toward the lake that evening. I'd been feeling restless all day, unable to shake the weight that had settled in my chest since the first night at Camp Waverly. There was something off about the place, something I couldn't quite explain. The way the trees whispered when the wind barely touched them, the way the shadows stretched unnaturally at dusk, as if they were waiting to swallow something whole. I'd promised myself that I wouldn't let the ghost story get to me, that I wouldn't be like everyone else, sitting around the fire, pretending to be scared for the thrill of it. But the more I thought about it, the more the words kept circling in my mind. The Waverly Ghost. I didn't believe in ghosts, not in the way people talked about them. But I couldn't ignore the feeling, the gut instinct that something was wrong here. The moon hung low, casting a silver light on the lake, making the water shimmer like liquid glass. I walked along the gravel path, my shoes crunching with every step, trying to calm the nervous flutter in my stomach. There were no other campers around, not at this hour. Everyone else was either at the campfire or tucked safely in their cabins. I wanted to be alone, to clear my head, but deep down, I knew the silence around me wasn't normal. That's when I heard it. At first, it was just a whisper, so soft, I thought it was the wind. I stopped, looking around. Nothing. The trees stood still, their branches swaying only slightly in the evening breeze. But then it came again, more distinct this time. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. The kind of sound you hear when someone is trying to sneak up on you, but not quite managing to be quiet enough. It was behind me, close enough to make my heart race. I spun around, expecting to see someone, but there was no one there. Just the darkness of the woods, stretching out in every direction. My breath came faster, and I felt a cold sweat begin to form on the back of my neck. I was imagining things. It was just the wind. I told myself that over and over like a mantra, but it didn't help. Then I saw it. Just past the trees, in the dim light of the moon, I caught a glimpse of movement. A figure, tall and thin, standing motionless between the trunks of two pines. I could barely make out its shape, but something about it made my stomach churn. It wasn't a person, not in the way I knew people. There was something wrong about it, something unnatural. I froze. My legs felt like they were made of stone, refusing to move. The figure didn't move either. It was like we were locked in some silent standoff, both of us unwilling to make the first move. I tried to call out, but no sound left my lips. My throat had gone dry, tight with fear. For a moment, all I could do was stare, my mind racing for an explanation. Maybe it was a prank, one of the counselors trying to mess with me. But as I stood there, watching, I realized something. I had been walking down the path for a good 5 minutes, and no one had passed me. No one else was supposed to be out here. The figure remained still, its outline barely visible in the dark. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I had to move. I had to get out of there. But my body didn't obey. I couldn't look away, couldn't tear my eyes from the shadow in front of me. It was as if something was pulling me in, making me wait, making me watch. The air seemed to grow heavier, thick with the weight of something ancient, something that had been hiding in the woods for far longer than I could comprehend. I took a step back, my foot crunching louder than I expected on the gravel path. The figure's head jerked up sharply, its gaze locking onto mine. I couldn't see its face, not clearly, but I felt its eyes on me, cold, piercing, like it could see into my very soul. Panic surged through me. Every instinct screamed for me to run, but my legs were frozen, as though they were stuck in place by invisible chains. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure moved. It was quick, too quick, darting between the trees, vanishing into the shadows like it was never there. I stood there for a moment, heart hammering in my chest, breath coming in short gasps. My mind was reeling, trying to process what had just happened. I couldn't explain it. I didn't want to explain it. I turned on my heel and ran back toward the camp, my footsteps frantic, the gravel path blurring beneath me. The fear that had settled in my chest was suffocating. It wasn't just the ghost story anymore. It was something far worse. As I reached the camp, the sounds of the fire and laughter drifted toward me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever I had seen, whatever had watched me from the woods, wasn't finished with me yet. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Camp Waverly. I kept telling myself it was just the weird stories, just my overactive imagination running wild. But the more I heard, the more I couldn't ignore the strange occurrences that crept into my days, the shadows that didn't quite belong, the whispers on the wind that seemed to call my name when no one else was around. I decided I had to know more. I couldn't just let it go. I had to get to the bottom of this, whatever this was. Something inside me told me the camp was hiding something, something that had been buried for a long time, maybe even for good reason. I began my search late one afternoon, when the camp was quieter and the other kids were at their activities. I wandered through the old cabins near the edge of the camp, the ones that no one seemed to use anymore. They were falling apart, they were warped with age, the windows cracked or covered with thick layers of dust. No one bothered to clean them. It felt like they were forgotten, just like the dark history James had hinted at. I explored a few rooms, moving through the silence, my steps muffled by the worn floorboards beneath me. The musty smell of mildew filled the air, and the deeper I went, the more the place felt like a tomb. It was as though the cabin was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I almost expected the walls to close in on me. Then I found it. Tucked away in a small, hidden drawer in the corner of an old desk was a leather-bound journal. It looked ancient, its pages yellowed and brittle. I pulled it out carefully, running my fingers over the cover, feeling the deep grooves of the worn leather. Something about it made my pulse quicken. I opened the first page, and the scrawl of handwriting jumped out at me. Hasty, frantic, as though the writer was desperate to get something out before time ran out. August 12th, 1987. I don't know how much longer I have. The others are starting to ask questions. They know something is wrong, but they don't know the truth. I need to keep my head down. I need to survive. My heart pounded in my chest. It wasn't just a random journal. This was something from years ago, written by someone who had known exactly what was going on, someone who was living through it. The pages were filled with this kind of terrified writing, all about strange happenings, disappearances, strange noises in the night, and a growing sense of dread that seemed to infect everyone who came to the camp. The writer mentioned seeing it, the ghost, the thing that haunted the woods, but they never gave a name. Instead, they referred to it as the thing in the shadows, always capitalized, always like it was something far more than just a spirit. But then I came across an entry that stopped me cold. James has been following me. I'm sure of it. He's been in the woods, watching. I can hear him sometimes, whispering. He says it's all part of the plan, but I don't trust him. He knows more than he's letting on, and I'm afraid he's already too deep in. If anyone finds this, you need to burn it. Destroy it. Don't let anyone read it. Don't let anyone know what happened here. James. My stomach sank. The name was too familiar. It was the same James who had been feeding us those ghost stories, the same one who seemed to know a little too much. The words on the page blurred as I turned to the next one, each entry more frantic than the last. The writer's sanity seemed to slip away with each passing day. They spoke of a ritual, something that had been started long before they arrived at the camp, something that had to be completed, something that would bring it into being fully, whatever it was. In one entry, the words became more and more jumbled, as if the writer had been writing while panicking. They're all gone now. The ritual, it didn't work. I thought I could stop it, but I'm just one person. James, he wanted to happen. He knew what he was doing. I don't know if anyone will ever find this, but if they do, they need to understand. The ghost isn't a ghost. It's something much worse. It's a force. And it's here. The woods, they're alive, Christ. They're alive. I sat there, the journal in my hands, feeling a cold sweat creep up my spine. Every word felt heavier than the last. It wasn't just a camp haunted by a restless spirit. No, this was something darker. Something tied to the land itself. Something ancient and cruel. And James, he knew. He had been here for far longer than he let on, and he had a hand in whatever twisted thing was happening. I turned the page, desperate to find more answers. But the final entry sent a chill through my bones. The ghost will never leave. It needs us to be afraid. It needs us to remember. James, he won't stop. If you're reading this, burn it. Burn all. Forget Camp Waverly. Forget the woods. Forget the legends. And most of all, forget James. The journal slipped from my trembling fingers, falling to the floor with a soft thud. I felt the weight of it, of the history it carried, pressing down on me. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. I was too far in now. There was no going back. Everything I thought I knew had been a lie. James hadn't been telling us stories. He had been preparing us for something. He had been feeding us fear, just like the journal had said. And now, I was tangled in whatever mess he had started. The ghost, the camp, the woods, everything was connected. It wasn't just a legend. It was real. And now I was part of it. I couldn't let this go. Not now. Not after everything I had uncovered. Whatever James was planning, whatever was coming, I had to stop it. But how? I couldn't take it anymore. The whispering in the woods, the shadows that seemed to follow me, and the strange way James acted. It was all too much. I needed answers. I needed to know what was really happening here, and why James seemed to know more than he let on. That evening, the camp was quiet. Most of the campers were gathered by the fire pit, their laughter carrying across the clearing. The cool air of the forest made the trees rustle softly, but there was an unsettling stillness in the air, like the whole place was holding its breath. I slipped away unnoticed, my heart pounding in my chest. My feet crunched on the gravel as I walked toward the woods, the same path James always took when he disappeared into the trees. The darkness closed in around me, and the deeper I went, the heavier the silence grew. It felt like the forest itself was watching me, waiting for something. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and my steps slowed, as though the earth itself was pulling me into the unknown. But I couldn't stop. Not now. I reached the clearing where I had first seen him, James. He was standing by a large oak tree, his figure half hidden in the shadows. The moonlight barely touched the ground, casting a faint glow over his face. He looked like he had been expecting me. "You came," he said, his voice smooth, like he was talking to an old friend. I crossed my arms, trying to hide the unease bubbling inside me. "I want answers, James. You've been feeding us those stories, the ghost, the legend. What's really going on here?" He smiled, his lips curling into that familiar smirk. But there was something different in his eyes now, something colder. "You don't understand, Christ. You're not ready for this." His voice dropped to a whisper, but the words felt like they were meant for the forest itself. "But you're here now, aren't you? So I guess you'll find out whether you want to or not." I stepped closer, my fist clenched. "What are you talking about? Why do you keep telling everyone about the ghost? Why are you making us all so scared? Are you trying to control us?" His eyes flickered, and for a split second, I saw something behind his calm facade. A flash of fear, or maybe something darker. But it was gone as quickly as it had come. He let out a soft laugh, almost as if he were humoring me. "Control? No, no, Christ. You're thinking too small." He took a step toward me, his face inches from mine. I could feel his breath on my skin, cold and unnerving. You're not just here for some ghost story. This place, this camp, it's alive, you understand? The ghost is a part of it. It's not just some restless soul. It's something much older, much more dangerous. And I've been trying to keep it contained. I've been trying to control it. I swallowed hard. Control it? You've been playing us all along, telling us those stories to keep us scared. But it's not the fear you're after, is it? It's the power. I took a deep breath. You've been feeding it, haven't you? The ghost. Everything here. You've been feeding the fear to make it stronger, to keep it alive. His smile faded, and for a moment he looked tired, like a man who had carried too much for too long. You think you know everything? He asked softly, but his tone was suddenly cold, dark. You have no idea what it's like to carry that kind of power, to feel it crawling under your skin, telling you that you can control it, that you can bend it to your will. But that's the trick, Christ. You can't control it. You can only feed it. And the more you feed it, the stronger it gets. The stronger I get. I could feel the weight of his words pressing in on me, like the trees around us were leaning in, listening to our conversation. I suddenly realized that I wasn't just talking to James. I was talking to something older, something darker, something that had been here long before either of us. You don't understand, he whispered, his eyes flashing in the dim light. I've been keeping it at bay, but it's starting to slip through the cracks. That's why I've been telling the stories. That's why I've been feeding the fear. I needed to stay strong. I needed to stay here. If it breaks free, if it rises, we're all done for. Every single one of us. I took a step back, my breath shallow, my mind spinning. So, you're not just trying to scare us. You're using us. All of us. You're using the fear to keep it contained. James's expression darkened, his lips curling into a smile that made my blood run cold. You're getting it now. But it's too late for you. You can't stop it. Not now. It's already too powerful. And soon, it won't just be me controlling it. It will control us all. I shook my head, the reality of his words sinking in. No, I'm not going to let you do this. Whatever this is, I won't let you drag us all into it. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think you have a choice? You think you can stop it? He stepped closer, his voice a low hiss. You can't. You're already part of it now, Christ. You've already seen it. You've already heard it. And now, it's only a matter of time before you can't tell the difference between the legend and the truth. I didn't know what to say. The air was thick with tension, the weight of his words pressing down on me. I was scared, but something inside me, a spark of defiance, pushed me forward. We'll see about that, I said, my voice steady despite the storm of thoughts in my head. James's smile faded completely, his face hardening. You're making a mistake. I didn't answer. I turned and started walking away, back toward the camp, toward the safety of the light. But as I glanced back, I saw him standing there, watching me. He didn't follow, but I knew he didn't need to. The ghost, whatever it was already here. And James had been right about one thing. I had no idea what I was up against. The woods felt different that night, like they were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. I stood on the edge of the clearing, staring into the dark abyss of the trees. The campfire was a distant memory, its warmth long gone. There was only the cold, creeping silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. James was standing beside me, his expression twisted into something I couldn't place. Fear? Excitement? Something darker. He was holding a flashlight, the beam flickering as he swept it through the trees. You don't get it, do you? He said, his voice low, almost whispering. The ghost, it's never been about the stories. It's real, Christ. And now you're part of it, whether you like it or not. I wasn't sure if he was trying to warn me, or if he was just trying to scare me. Either way, the words didn't feel right. What do you mean, part of it? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. What do you want from us? James grinned, a wide, almost manic smile that didn't reach his eyes. I don't want anything from you. I just want you to understand. The ghost needs the fear. It thrives on it. And as long as everyone is afraid, as long as they believe the stories, it will stay in the shadows. I've been feeding it for years, Christ. Feeding it, controlling it. I'm the one who keeps it alive. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of the truth I didn't want to acknowledge. I had been wrong about him. James wasn't just telling stories. He was the one keeping the ghost alive. He was the reason it had never stopped haunting this camp, this place. He had been manipulating everyone's fear, using it to control us all. "Stop this, James," I said, my voice trembling despite myself. "You don't understand what you're doing. This isn't just a game. It's real, and you're letting it get out of control. We have to stop it." His grin only widened, as if my fear had confirmed everything he had hoped for. "You can't stop it, Christ. You can't. It's already here." And just like that, I felt it. The change in the air, the shift in the atmosphere. The temperature dropped. I could feel it deep in my bones. The trees seemed to sway, but not in a natural way. There was a weight to the movement, a sense that something was pushing through, something ancient and hungry. My heart hammered in my chest, and for a moment, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A shadow, just beyond the trees, lingering at the edge of the clearing. It was tall, towering, but barely there, like a figure made of smoke or mist. It flickered in and out of sight, never fully revealing itself, but I could feel it. It was watching us, waiting for us to make a move. James didn't seem to notice it. He was too caught up in his own world, his own twisted vision of control. "It's here, Christ," he said, almost in a trance. "The ghost is here. And now, you'll understand what I've been doing all this time." Before I could respond, the shadow moved. It wasn't slow, like a person walking. It was fast, like a predator closing in on its prey. I turned to run, but I wasn't fast enough. The figure darted toward us, its presence filling the air with a suffocating darkness that pressed against my chest. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its gaze, cold and unrelenting. "James!" I shouted, grabbing his arm. "We need to go. Now." But James didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the darkness, his face pale, almost reverent. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "It's everything I've wanted." I tried to pull him away, but he wouldn't budge. The shadow was getting closer, its form becoming more solid, more real. It was as if the air itself was bending around it, warping in a way I couldn't explain. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the shadow lunged. A chilling scream tore through the night air, James's scream, and the sound of it sent a wave of ice through my veins. I looked up, but all I saw was darkness swallowing him whole. The shadow was all around him, engulfing him in its grasp, its cold, suffocating presence swallowing every sound, every trace of his existence. I couldn't move. I stood frozen, paralyzed by fear, unable to tear my eyes away from the horror unfolding in front of me. James's body jerked, as if it was being pulled in every direction, his limbs twisting unnaturally. Then, with one final scream, his form was consumed by the darkness. There was nothing left but the echo of his cry, reverberating through the trees. For a moment, the woods were silent again. The air felt thicker now, heavy with the weight of what had just happened. The shadow was gone, and with it, James. I stumbled back, my breath ragged, my heart pounding in my chest. The woods were no longer just a place of stories. They were alive, full of things I couldn't understand, things that had been hidden from us for too long. I turned and ran, my feet pounding the dirt, my mind racing. I didn't know where I was going, didn't know how to stop what had just happened. But one thing was clear, I had to get out. If I stayed, I would become just another part of the legend, another story to be whispered around the campfire. I didn't look back. I couldn't. All I could hear was the sound of my own footsteps, the thudding of my heart, and the whisper of the wind through the trees. The ghost was still out there, and it wasn't done yet. But I was done. I had seen enough. When the first light of dawn finally crept through the trees, everything seemed still. The air was thick, as though the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. The ghost was gone. James was gone. But the weight of what had happened stayed heavy on my chest, like a dark cloud that wouldn't lift. I was standing at the edge of the woods when I heard the other campers stirring. The sounds of their voices came to me in muffled waves, their laughter and chatter feeling strange, distant, like they didn't belong here. I could hardly recognize the faces around me, their expressions blank and uncertain, as though none of us knew how to move on for what had just happened. The counselors, the ones who had seen us through the long nights of campfire stories and ghost tales, didn't speak a word about what had happened. There was no mention of James's disappearance, no questions asked about the things we had seen in the woods. They simply gathered the campers together, herding us like sheep toward the buses, as if nothing had changed. I couldn't shake the feeling that the camp had been altered in some way. The trees seemed taller now, the air thicker. The lake, which had once looked peaceful, now seemed oppressive, its dark waters hiding something I couldn't quite see. I wanted to forget, to move on, but I knew deep down that I never could. As I boarded the bus, I glanced out the window one last time, staring at the camp, the place that had been so full of life just days before. Now it felt empty, hollow. The camp's bright colors, its cheerful banners and cabins, had all faded in my mind, replaced with the dark shadows of the woods, the things that lurked just out of sight. I could hear the other kids talking behind me, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. They didn't understand. They didn't know what I knew. Maybe they never would. Maybe it was better that way. I leaned my head against the cool window, closing my eyes for a moment, trying to let the rhythmic sound of the wheels on the road calm me. But it didn't work. The memories of the ghost, of James's twisted grin, of the shadows moving in the woods, wouldn't leave me. They had taken root in my mind, buried deep within me, and I knew that no matter how far I went, I would always carry them with me. The bus ride seemed longer than usual. The faces of the other campers, their conversations, their laughter, it all felt like a distant echo. I couldn't focus on anything. All I could think about was the night in the woods, the feeling of being watched, the way the trees seemed to shift and whisper in the dark. I could almost hear the ghost's breath, cold and distant, just behind me. By the time we reached the town, I knew that I had changed. Not in a way I could explain to anyone, but in a way I felt in my bones. I had seen something dark, something real, and it had changed me. The bus stopped, the doors creaked open, and the other kids filed out, some talking about what they'd do that afternoon, others complaining about the long ride. But all I could do was stare ahead, my thoughts distant, clouded by what I'd experienced. I didn't want to go home, but I didn't want to stay either. I just wanted to forget. But I knew it was impossible. I took one last look at the camp as I stepped off the bus, watching as it faded into the distance behind me. The sun was high in the sky now, and the world seemed brighter, as if nothing had happened. But in my heart, I knew better. The truth was, Camp Waverly would never leave me. No matter how hard I tried to forget, no matter how many years passed, the ghost of that place, the stories, the shadows, James's twisted smile, would haunt me forever. Some things, I suppose, are meant to stay with you. The camp had been a trap, a place where fear had been fed and nurtured until it couldn't be controlled. And I had been part of it. I had been part of something darker than I could ever have imagined. As I walked away, I could feel the pull of the forest behind me, the weight of the ghost lingering, just out of reach, as if it were waiting for me to turn back. I didn't, but I knew the pull would never fade. It would follow me, even as I moved on, even as I tried to forget. Because some things, once they're part of you, are impossible to escape. And as the sound of the bus faded away, I couldn't help but wonder if it had all been worth it, or if it had only just begun. The fifth story. The clock on my dashboard flickered 11:45 p.m. as the hum of my rig's tires droned against the lonely stretch of asphalt. A faint fog rolled in, creeping across the road like something alive. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, my eyes scanning the dark horizon where the lights of the road seemed to disappear into the void. Out here, there was no sound but the engine and the occasional rustle of trees swaying in the wind. Route 666. If I had a dime for every time someone mentioned it, I'd probably be rich by now. It was one of those names that sent shivers down your spine, a road most people avoided, whisper about in truck stops like some kind of cursed legend. But not me. I was Lamar, a trucker with years of experience under my belt. I'd seen every highway and byway the country had to offer, and this stretch didn't scare me. As I passed mile marker 13, a chill crept into the air, heavier than the usual autumn cold. The fog thickened. The headlights of my rig barely cut through the mist, and the road stretched endlessly ahead. I tried to shake the unease creeping up my spine. This wasn't my first time on Route 666, but tonight felt different. I pulled into a small, run-down truck stop, barely more than a gas station with a few old trailers parked out front. The neon sign buzzed faintly, casting a dim light over the cracked concrete. I parked, feeling the weight of the road pressing in on me. I needed fuel, and maybe a quick bite to eat. Stepping out of the truck, the cold air hit me hard. The fog wrapped around me, and I could barely see 5 feet in front of me. I walked into the small store, and the bell over the door chimed faintly. The place smelled of stale coffee and old tobacco, a typical truck stop atmosphere, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Something about tonight fell off. Behind the counter stood an older man, his face as weathered as the station itself. His eyes, however, were sharp, too sharp for someone who seemed so old. He gave me a quick nod as I approached the counter, his gaze never leaving me, and his lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You're headed down 666, huh?" he asked, his voice low, like he was speaking of a secret. I shrugged, trying to brush off the oddness of his tone. "Yeah, just another route. Been down it a few times before." The man didn't say anything for a moment, just stared at me. His eyes were unsettling, as though he could see through me, reading something hidden beneath the surface. "You sure you know what you're doing?" he asked, his voice a little more intense now, the smile slipping from his face. "You know there's rules to follow on that road. Strange rules. If you don't follow them, you won't make it to the other side." I couldn't help but laugh, but the sound fell hollow. "Come on, man. Superstitions? I've been trucking for years. Ain't no rules I haven't broken." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing as if he was sizing me up. "You think that, huh? You think it's all just nonsense?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "Well, I'll tell you this, son. Don't speed on that road. Don't ever leave your truck after midnight. And whatever you do, don't look at the trees. If you break the rules, the road will take you, and you might not come back." I stared at him, unsure if he was joking or if he had lost his mind. But there was something about the way he spoke, his tone, the seriousness in his eyes, that made me uneasy. "Listen," I said, trying to sound confident. "I've been on roads like this 100 times. There's no rules, man. Just get to where I'm going, and that's it." The old man shook his head slowly, like he was watching a child about to make a dangerous mistake. "You'll see," he murmured. "Just don't say I didn't warn you." He handed me my change, and I took it without a word. As I turned to leave, the man's gaze followed me, his expression unreadable. There was something in the air, something in the way he looked at me that made me feel like I'd just been marked for something I couldn't yet understand. I stepped back outside, the fog now thicker, almost suffocating. My rig was still parked at the pump, the engine idling, waiting to take me down the road. I climbed back into the cab, shaking my head. Superstitions, right? I pulled out of the truck stop, the tires crunching against the gravel. The fog seemed to close in around me, and the road ahead looked darker than it had before. I tried to shake off the weird feeling, focusing on the road, but it didn't go away. Roman's words echoed in my mind, and for the first time, I found myself wondering if there was some truth to the old man's warning. The tires hummed softly against the worn asphalt, the only sound that filled the cab. It was just me and the road now, nothing more. A quick glance at the clock told me it was well past midnight. Route 666 stretched out in front of me, a long, dark ribbon that seemed to disappear into the fog. It was the kind of stretch that made a man think about things he usually wouldn't, about the way the world felt when it was this quiet, this empty. I've driven these roads 100 times before. The lonely stretches of Ohio don't scare me. They never did. But tonight, something fell off. I couldn't shake the feeling, not even with the engine's steady roar filling the cabin. The fog crept in, thick as smoke, wrapping itself around the truck like an invisible hand. The headlights barely cut through it, just enough to see the outlines of the road, nothing more. I reached for the radio, twisting the knob absent-mindedly. Static, that's all. I tried again, but it was the same, nothing but that screeching white noise. I turned it off and leaned back in my seat, my hands gripping the wheel tighter. The road ahead was just a blur of gray. I caught myself glancing at the trees on the side of the road. They looked wrong, their branches bent in odd angles, like they were reaching toward the truck, their outlines shifting with every turn of the wheel. I quickly snapped my gaze back to the road, shaking my head. "It's just the fog," I muttered to myself. "Focus, Lamar. Don't let the road mess with your head." But the longer I drove, the more I felt it, a creeping sensation that I wasn't alone out here. It wasn't the kind of loneliness a man gets used to when he's out on the road. This was different. This felt like something, or someone, was watching me. I looked at the clock again. 1:30 a.m. I tried to settle my mind, telling myself it was just the darkness playing tricks. I pushed the gas pedal a little harder. The truck responded, its engine growling as it picked up speed. I needed to clear this fog, get some space between me and whatever I thought I saw back there. But the faster I went, the worse it got. The fog thickened, swirling around the cab like it had a life of its own. The air turned cold, a bone-chilling cold that seeped through the vents, settling deep in my bones. Suddenly, the engine sputtered, and the truck jerked. I yanked my foot off the pedal, my heart jumping in my chest. The truck groaned, like it was struggling to stay alive. The headlights flickered and then went out completely. I cursed under my breath, slamming the dashboard. Not now. Come on, not now. I coasted to a stop, the sound of the tires rolling on the wet asphalt the only noise in the night. I sat there for a second, frozen, just listening. Everything was quiet, too quiet. I could hear my own breath, shallow and fast, and the faint hiss of the wind. I tried starting the truck again. Nothing. I turned the key again and again, but it just wouldn't turn over. I slammed my hand on the wheel in frustration. What the hell? I muttered. I looked around. There was no sign of another car for miles. Just the endless stretch of road and trees, barely visible in the fog. A knot tightened in my stomach. There was something wrong about all of this. I glanced out the driver's side window. The fog had become so dense I could barely see a foot ahead. The trees were still there, but now they seemed to be closing in on me, leaning over the road like they were trying to trap me in this place. My hands shook as I grabbed the door handle and pushed it open. I was going to get out, check under the hood, maybe find some reason the truck wasn't starting. But as soon as I stepped out, the cold hit me. It wasn't just cold, it was unnatural. It sunk deep into my skin, making me feel small, vulnerable. I pulled my jacket tighter and took a few steps around the truck, my boots crunching on the gravel. I knew I shouldn't be outside, not after what Roman had said. But the truck wasn't moving, and I had to figure out what was going wrong. The moment my foot hit the ground, though, I felt it, a shift in the air, like the atmosphere had thickened. I looked up, my heart skipping a beat. In the distance, barely visible through the fog, I saw a figure standing at the edge of the road. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a man, not exactly. The figure was too still, too unnatural, like it wasn't quite real. My heart hammered in my chest. I stepped back toward the truck, my eyes never leaving the figure. I called out, "Hey, who's out there?" My voice sounded small, swallowed by the night. No answer. I stepped back again, feeling a strange pull, like something was drawing me closer to the figure. I shook my head, snapping out of it. I need to get back in the truck, get the hell out of here. But as I turned to go, I caught a glimpse of something else, another figure, just behind the first. It was standing still, just like the first one, its form barely visible. My mind raced. My legs felt like lead, but I forced myself to move. Fast. I slammed the truck door shut and climbed in, my hands shaking as I tried the engine again. This time, it roared to life, the headlights flickering on, illuminating the figures for a split second before they vanished into the fog. I didn't wait. I threw the truck into gear and sped off, the tires squealing as I raced down the road. But the feeling didn't leave me. The sense that something was following, watching, waiting. I glanced into the rearview mirror, half expecting to see them, those figures standing in the fog behind me. But the road was empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone, that I'd made a mistake by leaving the truck stop, that I'd broken the first rule. I should have listened to Roman, but it was too late now. The road ahead stretched on, the fog rolling and thicker than ever. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something more than the usual fatigue, a fear I couldn't explain. I pushed the pedal harder. I needed to get out of here. But no matter how fast I drove, I couldn't escape the sense that the road was somehow closing in around me, and whatever was out there in the fog was waiting. I shouldn't have sped. I knew that. I could feel it in my bones, that nagging voice in the back of my head telling me to follow the rules Roman had mentioned. But I didn't listen. I was frustrated, tired, and maybe even a little arrogant. What was the worst that could happen? It was just an old trucker superstition, right? People have been driving Route 666 for decades, hell, centuries, without falling victim to whatever Roman was rambling on about. But as soon as I pressed my foot down harder on the pedal, something changed. It wasn't a sudden jolt or a sharp, dramatic shift. No, it was more like the whole world around me started to feel heavier. Like the air itself thickened and dragged the truck forward, deeper into the mist. I felt the road beneath my tires, the asphalt smooth but unnervingly soft, as if it were alive, pulling me, urging me faster. My headlights flickered again. Once. Twice. I cursed under my breath and tried to adjust the dimmer, but nothing worked. The road ahead seemed to stretch on forever, curling into the fog. I couldn't see anything beyond a few yards ahead of me, and the eerie quiet made it worse. The truck's engine rumbled like a low growl in the background, and I kept my eyes locked on the narrow strip of pavement. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from the trees, their twisted shapes barely visible in the mist. Then I heard it, something rustling in the trees. No, not rustling, moving. A shadow. Or maybe it was more than that. Something larger, something alive. I didn't dare look directly at it, but I could feel in my gut. My heartbeat sped up, and for a moment, I regretted ignoring Roman's warnings. I reached for the steering wheel tighter, trying to focus, but my foot remained pressed down, and the truck kept pushing forward. I could hear the rumble of the engine fighting to go faster, like it was begging me to keep going. But then, in the corner of my eye, I saw something, a flicker of movement just past the trees. It wasn't human. No, it was something darker. Something wrong. I had broken the first rule. Don't speed. And that's when the truck sputtered. The engine choked and coughed, and, for a split second, I thought it had died. I gripped the wheel harder, my palms sweaty, and pushed the gas pedal down, hoping to coax it back to life. But it was no use. The truck decelerated, the engine wheezing, and then the lights cut out. Complete darkness. I slammed my hand down on the dashboard, swearing. I cursed the road, the fog, everything. I could feel the weight of the night pressing in on me from all sides. The silence was deafening. I pulled the truck to the side of the road, my heart racing. The headlights flickered back on for a second, casting eerie shadows across the trees. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, I could have sworn I saw something. No, someone standing there in the mist. A figure, tall, shrouded in darkness. My blood ran cold. I blinked, and it was gone. Just like that. I muttered a prayer under my breath. I could hear the clock ticking on the dashboard, its faint sound the only thing breaking the suffocating silence. 12:45 a.m. I glanced at the clock, then at the trees. There was again movement, but not like before. These weren't just shadows. These were figures, blurred and distorted, standing motionless by the side of the road. I couldn't look at them directly, but I felt their eyes on me, watching, waiting. I had heard stories from other truckers about Route 666. They always said the same thing. Don't speed. Don't leave the truck after midnight. And most of all, don't look at the trees. But I was too far gone now. The road had its grip on me, and I had broken the rules. I had to get out of there. Now, my fingers trembled as I turned the key in the ignition. The truck groaned to life, but the engine sounded wrong, like it was struggling against something. I could feel it, a subtle resistance, as if the road itself was pushing back. And that's when it happened. A loud thud, followed by the unmistakable sound of scratching against the side of the truck. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I didn't dare look, but the sound, scratching, was getting louder, like something was dragging along the metal. I glanced at the clock again, 12:55 a.m. 5 minutes had passed, and yet it felt like an eternity. I slammed the truck into drive and accelerated, my hands shaking on the wheel. The trees seemed to close in around me as I sped through the fog, the scratching sound still echoing in my ears. The road was now a blur of mist and shadows, and I could feel them, whatever they were, gathering, watching. I didn't dare look in the rearview mirror again. I knew better, but something in the back of my mind told me that I had made a terrible mistake. The road had caught me. The fog was alive, and I had broken the rules. The truck lurched forward, and I could hear the engine straining under the weight of the night. I didn't know how much longer I could keep going, but I wasn't about to stop. Not here. Not now. Not with them out there. As I pressed on through the fog, I could almost hear Roman's voice in my head, cold and certain. You broke the rules. Now the road has you. And I was starting to believe it. I pressed my foot harder on the gas pedal, but the truck's engine sputtered and groaned. I cursed under my breath. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not now, not here. My eyes flicked to the dashboard. The fuel gauge was fine, but the truck refused to move. I tried turning the key again, a quick twist, hoping to jumpstart it, but nothing. The engine remained silent, mocking me. A cold sweat trickled down my back, and I wiped my hands on my jeans. The headlights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows on the empty road. The silence outside felt too thick, almost suffocating. It was like the world had just stopped. I stared out the windshield, trying to make sense of the unnerving stillness. The fog had crept in deeper, blurring everything beyond the glass. The road, the trees, even the sky. Everything was wrapped in this heavy, oppressive gray. I felt small, trapped in it, like the world was folding in around me. Then I heard it, a soft rustle, something brushing against the side of the truck. My breath caught in my throat. I leaned forward, trying to peer out the side mirror. There was nothing, nothing at all, except for the trees. They weren't just trees. Something about them was wrong. The trunks seemed to twist unnaturally, as if they were moving. I blinked, but they stayed still as trees should. My heart raced, but I shoved the panic down. I had to keep it together. I wasn't some rookie driver spooked by a little fog in the dark. I'd been on roads much scarier than this. But still, a deep unease gnawed at me. I slapped the dashboard in frustration, but it didn't help. I was stuck, stranded in the middle of nowhere on Route 666, and the damn truck wouldn't start. The air outside was still, but it felt wrong, like it was waiting for something. That's when I saw him. Roman. He was standing at the edge of the road, just out of reach of my headlights. His figure was hard to make out through the fog, but there was something about him. He didn't move, just stood there like he was watching me. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I grabbed the door handle, ready to get out, and asked him if he could help me. Maybe he had a tow truck or knew a mechanic nearby. But before I could open the door, Roman raised his hand slowly. The motion was deliberate, almost as if he was telling me to stay. I froze. He didn't say anything, but there was a weight in the air now, a pressure I couldn't ignore. My instinct screamed at me to leave, to get away from this place as fast as possible. But there was something in his eyes, something dark, almost predatory, that kept me rooted to the seat. His mouth moved, but I couldn't hear anything. The wind outside was silent, and his voice didn't seem to reach me. Still, I could read his lips. You broke the rules. My blood ran cold. The words hit me like a slap in the face, the force of them making my stomach twist. I had no idea what he was talking about. Rules? What rules? But I could tell from the way he looked at me that whatever he meant, it wasn't good. Not good at all. Roman stepped closer, his boots crunching on the gravel road, but I didn't move. I couldn't. His presence was like a heavy shadow, pressing in on me from all sides. He stopped just in front of the truck, his face now visible in the headlights. His eyes were like pits, dark, endless, and somehow wrong. He had this unsettling calm about him, like he knew something I didn't. Something that made my gut twist tighter than it ever had before. You're not going anywhere, he said, his voice low and deep, almost like it was coming from somewhere far away. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I was paralyzed. There was no escape. I had no idea what was happening, but it felt like something much bigger than me was at play. Something that wasn't supposed to be real. You've been driving down this road for too long, Roman continued, his voice growing sharper, like a blade cutting through the fog. And now you're part of it. The road. The curse. You can't just leave. I swallowed hard. I tried to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. He glanced up at the trees, and it was then I realized what was happening. The trees weren't just trees anymore. They had faces, twisted, contorted faces that seemed to leer down at me. I saw their mouths move in silent screams, but their voices were in my head. It was like the whole world was alive, and it was all closing in on me. The road, the fog, the trees, everything was a trap that I had willingly walked into. Roman's gaze returned to me, cold and unfeeling. It's too late. The road has you now. You can't break free. I wanted to scream, to punch the gas pedal and get away from this madness, but the truck wouldn't start. The engine was dead, and so was any hope of escaping this place. Don't look away, Roman whispered, his voice barely audible over the roar of my own heartbeat. You can't run. You can't hide. You've crossed the line. The trees, The faces, they were all watching me now. Their eyes gleamed in the dim light, and the world around me seemed to fade into something darker, more ancient. I was trapped. I was part of it now, and there was no going back. The engine sputtered, then died completely. I slammed my hands on the steering wheel, the noise echoing in the empty truck cab. The silence that followed was suffocating, so thick it pressed against my chest like a weight. I tried the ignition again, my fingers trembling as I turned the key. Nothing. The dashboard lights flickered weakly, then went dark. My breath hitched to my throat. I cursed under my breath and grabbed the gear shift. The truck had to move. I couldn't just sit here. If I stayed, I just knew, the road, or whatever was out there, would claim me. It already felt like it was pulling me into its dark heart. I threw the gear into reverse, but the truck didn't budge. I pushed the pedal down, twisting the wheel, trying to force it to move. Still nothing. And then, that feeling hit again, the sensation that I wasn't alone. My skin prickled, my heart hammering in my chest. I didn't even have to look. I could feel them. The shadows in the trees, darker than the night itself, were creeping closer. Someone was standing by the roadside now, just outside the reach of my headlights. I couldn't make out any details, but I saw the figure clearly. Tall, too tall for a normal person, with limbs that stretched in unnatural angles. I could feel my breath catch in my throat, fear freezing me in place. I wasn't imagining it. This wasn't some bad dream. It was real, and that thing out there wasn't human. My mind raced as I gripped the steering wheel again. It had to be Roman. It had to be. He had warned me. No speeding, no leaving the truck after midnight, don't look at the trees. But I'd broken every single one of those rules, hadn't I? The figure shifted. Slowly, it took a step forward, and then another. The trees behind it seemed to shift too, leaning in, bending toward the road. It wasn't just one shadow now. It was a mass of them, slinking between the trunks, as if they were part of the forest itself. I had to get out of here. My heart hammered in my chest as I yanked the gear shift again, slamming my foot onto the accelerator with everything I had. The engine groaned, but didn't start. The air was thick, pressing against me, closing in from all sides. The figure in front of me took another step. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Sweat ran down the back of my neck, my palms slick on the steering wheel. I looked in the rearview mirror, hoping to see the road behind me. Anything to keep my mind from slipping into panic. But the road behind me was worse. The shadows weren't just in the trees anymore. They were on the road, moving. They slithered and shifted, dark and jagged, like they were alive. I spun the wheel, my hands shaking. This was it. I had to get out. But the truck wouldn't move. The shadows behind me were closing in, coming faster now, like they were chasing me. And that figure, it was closer now, standing just beside my door. The cold air felt like it was seeping into the truck from every crack, from every inch of glass. I wanted to scream, but my throat was tight. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. The lights flickered. The fog pressed harder against the windshield. The figure finally stepped forward. My eyes locked on it. Its eyes, or what I thought were eyes, were like holes in the night, dark and endless. "You broke the rules," it whispered. I didn't know if it was Roman's voice, or something else entirely, but it felt like Roman. The warning, the rules, all of it was rushing back to me, suffocating me. And I had broken every one. The thing leaned closer to the truck, its face a black void. I could feel it, a coldness creeping through the air, draining the warmth from my body. I could hear it breathing now. The sound was slow, deep. It was waiting. I tried the engine again. My fingers were numb, but I twisted the key, desperate. The engine sputtered, and then, finally, it roared to life. The headlights flickered, then steadied. My heart raced as I slammed the truck into drive, jerking forward. The truck bucked and groaned, but it was moving. Slowly, but moving. The figure stayed where it was, watching. It didn't chase me. It didn't need to. I threw my foot down harder on the accelerator. The truck jolted forward, but the road didn't end. It just kept going, longer than it should have. The trees seemed to lean in, pressing against the sides of the truck like they were trying to suffocate it, to suffocate me. The fog rolled in thicker. I couldn't see anything ahead. The headlights barely cut through the haze. My mind was racing. I could still feel the weight of the thing on my back, the shadows crawling closer, but I kept going. I wasn't going to stop. I couldn't. Not now. But somewhere in the back of my mind, deep down where the fear really gnawed, I knew. This wasn't over. I had gotten away for now, sure. But the road, it wasn't done with me yet. And neither was Roman. I was part of it now. I had broken the rules. And there was no going back. The truck groaned again as the road stretched on forever, winding like it was pulling me into its dark grip, never letting go. The truck roared beneath me, the hum of the engine shaking my bones. I glanced out the windshield, watching the fog slowly lift, revealing the road ahead. I had made it. The twisting, suffocating stretch of Route 666 was behind me. I was free, or at least that's what I told myself. The trees, once pressing so close to the sides of the truck, had finally retreated. The darkness that clung to the road seemed to loosen its grip, but something in my chest told me I wasn't out of the woods yet. The air was still cold, too cold for this time of year. The kind of cold that feels like it's coming from somewhere deeper than the night. I couldn't shake the feeling that the road had a life of its own. It had almost swallowed me whole. I could still hear Roman's voice in my head, low and haunting. You're part of it now. I pushed the pedal down, desperate to make distance between me and the nightmare I just survived. But the further I drove, the heavier the weight in my chest grew. The road ahead was empty, just endless stretches of asphalt cutting through the now quiet countryside. It felt too quiet. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Roman standing in the shadows, his eyes burning through the darkness. But the mirror showed nothing but the fading remnants of the fog. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. That's when I saw it. In the distance, just beyond the curve, a shadow. It was just a blur at first, something barely perceptible, but it was moving toward me. My hands gripped the wheel tighter, my pulse quickening. I told myself it was nothing, just my mind playing tricks on me. But as the shadow got closer, I could see it clearer. A figure, standing on the side of the road. Roman. My heart sank. How? Why was he here? I'd left him behind. I had to have. But the road, it wasn't done with me. I slowed down, my stomach in knots. The truck's headlights cast a weak glow on the figure, and I could see Roman's outline, standing still like a statue. His clothes were the same as before, dirty, worn, almost like he'd been waiting for me. I wanted to look away, to just keep driving and forget this whole nightmare. But something stopped me. Something in the air felt thick, suffocating. And then, before I knew it, I had pulled over. I didn't mean to. My hands didn't obey. They just turned the wheel and stopped the truck as if they had their own will. The engine sputtered, the idling hum filling the silence. I could barely breathe. Roman walked closer, his steps deliberate, slow. His face was hidden in the shadows, but I could feel his eyes on me. I wanted to speak, to ask him what this was all about, but my throat tightened. He finally came to a stop just in front of my truck, his eyes never leaving mine. I told you, Lamar. His voice was barely a whisper, but I heard every word like it was spoken directly into my ear. You can't outrun it. You can't outrun this road. I swallowed hard. I'm done. I left. I'm free. Roman's lips twitched, a small, cruel smile forming. No, you're part of it now. The road chooses its passengers, and once it does, it doesn't let go. Not easily. My hands were shaking. The weight in my chest pressed harder, and I felt the sweat starting to form on my brow. The truck felt smaller, like the walls were closing in on me. He took a slow step forward, the air growing colder with every inch he moved. The choice is yours now, Lamar. You can go, but the road will follow. Or you can stay. You'll never leave this place, this world, but at least you'll understand. I blinked, trying to grasp what he was saying. My breath came faster, and my mind raced. What do you mean? What's this all about? Why me? Roman didn't answer right away. He just stared at me, his eyes burning with something dark. It's not about you. It's about the road. It's always been about the road. I felt a sharp pang in my chest. Something deep inside me wanted to argue, to scream, to make sense of it all. But the fear was too strong. What did he mean? Could I escape? Or was this just another part of the nightmare? I looked up again. The fog was starting to creep back, slowly at first, then faster, swirling around like a living thing. It seemed to reach out for me, pulling me back into its suffocating embrace. The air grew colder, and I couldn't breathe. I had to leave. I had to get out of here. But the road wasn't done with me. I could feel it. Roman tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. It's not your choice anymore, Lamar. It never was. I slammed my foot on the gas. The truck lurched forward, jerking me back in my seat. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I drove, harder, faster, the fog closing in behind me. But the road twisted. It stretched. It bent. No matter how hard I pushed the pedal down, I couldn't get away from it. It was chasing me. And then, in the rearview mirror, I saw it again. The figure. Roman, standing in the distance, watching, waiting. I didn't know how long I had been driving. Time felt like it had stopped. The road was endless. The fog was thick. The only thing I could feel was the cold and the crushing weight in my chest. The road was always there, behind me, ahead of me. I didn't know if I had escaped or if I ever would. The only thing I knew was that the road had a hold on me, and no matter how fast I drove, it was waiting for me to come back. It always would be. And the worst part, I wasn't sure if I wanted to escape anymore. Because maybe, just maybe, I had been part of it all along. The final choice was never mine to make.